Starting to get a wee bit frustrated with the inevitable audio dropouts that you're probably going to hear. It only happens when I'm just in the intro. As soon as we start, we clear up. I wonder if playing a wee bit of music or something at the start of the live stream would take care of it. Anyway, tonight we're visiting our annual Peatfest. I'm a little bit late with it, almost missed it this year. I kind of tried to cover this in the colder months and the earlier months of the year, but we didn't get to it in 2026 until now, but that's okay. Peat isn't just for Christmas, it's not just for winter. And we're also coming up to quite a few events and festivals and things that's formed around peat and smoky whiskies. Campbelltown Malts Festival, of course, and who can forget Fashiel at the end of May. So I think it's an appropriate time as any. But what I've got tonight is some really quite special bottles, things that I'm kind of looking forward to opening and sharing with you. The good stuff. So tonight's Peatfest is going to be dedicated to special peat. I'll tell you more about it in a second. I'm looking forward to it as always. I'll see you in a second. Hello, Whisky folk. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Thursday. Welcome to another Thursday. Welcome to the vPub. Hope you're all doing very, very well. I know that not everyone loves a peaty, smoky whiskey. I certainly do. But it's not necessary to be sipping along. If you don't fancy, if you're maybe you do like peaty whiskey and you're just not in the mood for it tonight, that's also fine. You just pick up whatever dram if you're in a position to do so and sip along with us, whatever you like. I'm going with it tonight because I'm in the mood for this, and that's the main reason that we're covering Peatfest tonight. I'm just in that mood. Yeah, as I mentioned, we usually do this every year in the colder months. We started this in 2022, so this will be our, what does that mean? 22, 23, 24, 25. This will be our fifth Peatfest, I suppose. And our friend, Peathead Frank, who this is kind of softly dedicated to this whole session, he's actually travelling over to Scotland tonight and is unlikely to pick it up. But maybe he's going to get a wee rest stop and pick us up in the tablet and he'll drop in and say hello. But I think a lot of us out in the community are really, really hooked by peat and peaty, smoky flavours in whiskey. I am going to share a story a wee bit later tonight about how, not only how I got into peaty whiskey, because it's quite profound in my own personal whiskey journey, but how that event kind of triggered and really was the catalyst. It's kind of the thing that enabled everything that I've come to enjoy online in whiskey. So everything that you see with my face or my voice or my words, all of it came from a very, very specific event, a story that I know I've shared before, but I'll maybe go into a few more details tonight and share that with you later. And it was a profound understanding and a profound reaction to a peaty, smoky whiskey that did it all. It changed me from being just a casual whiskey sipper, observer, into somebody who was an absolute geek. And that's been since 2009. That first happened in 2009. So we're getting, what's that, 17 years now? It's quite incredible. So we're going to go through whiskies that, for me, are either have moments like that, or they potentially could have moments like that, or they demonstrate gestures of generosity. Maybe stories of how I've come to happen across these bottles. Kind of personal stories and things like that as well, because I think peat, smoke, and smoky whiskies seem to have this really evocative kind of thread through them. There's a few people in my mind right now that I'm thinking of that don't enjoy peat, but I always want to finish that statement with the word yet. They haven't learned how to enjoy peat yet. I'm thinking of Gregor McQueen, I'm thinking of Stevie O, I'm thinking of quite a few people out there. Gregor's there, he's getting there now, he's starting to understand and enjoy it much more. But I think what happens is that you have a certain bottle, a certain whiskey that's peaty and smoky, and it just hits you so hard that you're just then hooked. But it's not maybe like Frank, where you're completely lost in peat and it's really the only track in the jukebox for a long, long time. I think what peaty smoky whiskies do is they just open up another avenue of flavour and exploration that's additional to all the other whiskies that are out there, rather than being the sole pursuit. But for tonight's vPub, for Peatfest, just for tonight's session, it will almost be the sole pursuit. I'm going to start with an unpeated whiskey tonight, and I'll explain why in a moment. I've got 6 drams to share with you tonight, 6 bottles, 4 of which I think are uncorking. 1, 2, 3, 4 are uncorkings, and the other 2 are things that I've already opened. One of them I've only just opened before going live tonight. Anyway, before we get into all of that fun stuff, I'm going to do what we always do and jump into the lounge and welcome some of you beautiful whiskey folk and dedicated barflies. Welcome everyone. Cheers. It's nice to be here again on another wee Thursday night. Campbelltown awaits. There isn't a vPub next week. I'm at the Campbelltown Malts Festival from Tuesday through Saturday morning. Late Tuesday. I won't be there on Tuesday. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'll be at Campbelltown Malts Festival next week. So it kind of wipes out the vPub. But it looks like the Whiskey Novice Jim might be able to step in and give you all a place to rock up and relax on Thursday night next week. More about that as soon as the details are nailed down. Anyway, how are you all doing? How's things in the lounge? Just let me pull up a second copy of the lounge, so that when it inevitably jumps and I lose my place, I've got maybe a backup. Maybe that can work tonight. Anyway, Highland Hamish is celebrating being a member of the Barflies for 59 months. He's saying greetings from Inverness. Moine the Peaties. Nice to have you, Hamish. How are you keeping, my friend? Glad you're on theme tonight. And my friend Tim, Dorpass Whiskey in the States, is saying perfect timing. Just spent half the day doing fuel reduction at our home. Now that I'm thoroughly smoked with burning Ponderosa pine needles. Cheers. A completely different take on Peat, Tim. It's nice to have you here, and thanks for it very much for your generous dram, buddy. Hope you're doing well. I'm going to scroll up a wee bit so I can catch some of you guys, but we've got Tim Pills is in. Another Tim. Good to see you, buddy. Saying evening, Roy, and all you barflies. Hope you're all well. I'm doing terrifically well, buddy. It's nice to welcome you as always. Alistair Gray from Speyside is saying good evening, Aquaviti and the magnificent barflies. Cheers, Alistair. Good to have you, buddy. Andy Hells, who's a wee bit tired doing his 12-hour shifts right now, I notice. Better shuffle the whiskey nook, so there's plenty of Peat for Peat Ed next week when he comes to visit. Lol. Obviously, Andy and Helen are down in Campbelltown now. They're maybe going to be expecting quite a few visitors over the course of the festival next week. Jean Kelly saying, evening, Roy, maybe have vPub session intro with you playing some fancy guitar music is the cure for audio drop-offs. Just a thought. That might take some time, Jean. I would have to learn how to play the guitar first. But I like the way you think, buddy. Andy is saying, evening, Roy, in for the start, but main bow out early. A whole week of 12-hour shifts taking their toll. No problem, buddy. We understand. We'll just put you down for a 10 out of 10 for the quiz at the end, like you always get, and you can pick up in the replay. Warner in Miami is saying, my peated choice today, Living Souls Legic 18-year-old single malt. Cheers. I wonder, did I share that in Glasgow last year? No, it was the Living Souls Ardbeg, the Kildalton. But I think I have that Legic 18-year-old as well. Living Souls are coming out with some cracking stuff, are they not, Warner? Good to have you, buddy. David in Portugal is saying, Oi, Whiskey Wide Web, Aquaviti, believe it or not, this is Tuesday. The Lisbon group had a peaty semi-blind with the Ardbeg 10 cast strength and Corrie Vrecken. Not sure if we prefer the 10 cast strength or the Corrie. Just the fact that it's that new cast strength has come onto the scene and it's kind of holding its own against the legendary Corrie Vrecken is good to see, right? I'm a fan of the 10 cast strength and a fan of the Corrie Vrecken. It appeared on a vPub recently, didn't it? You're looking duff-tacular, says Jimmy Legg this evening. That's the classic whiskey evangelism look. Duff-tacular. There's a word. I'll take it, Jimmy. Thank you, buddy. And it's brilliant to have you. I hope you and Angie are keeping well. B. van der Gulik. I think I've attempted to say your name in the past, buddy, and I've butchered it just as badly again. Starting the evening with a 7-year-old Bamor from Living Souls. Awesome dram. I like that one too. What a great way to kick things off. Anthony Lambert is saying, good evening, Roy, and everyone that knows me. This is my night tonight. I love the peat, even more if it's backed up with a big punch of sherry or port casks. Have an Octomore in my glass tonight. Fantastic, Anthony. I'm glad we could be of service. You're going to enjoy yourself tonight. This was all about just having a couple of hours of downtime, a wee bit of peace and quiet to focus fully on whiskey, community, chitty chat if you want. MW Fielder, I wonder if that's Martin. I'm not sure I would be this crazy into whiskey if it weren't for peated whiskey. There's a lot of people feel like that. That must be Martin Fielder, right? There's a lot of people feel like that, Martin. And I would definitely, I'm going to share a wee story later tonight that'll betray that I'm certainly one of them. The chat's jumped and I wasn't able to catch it, but that's okay. I'll be able to catch most of you a wee bit later. Hopefully the Neck Pour is celebrating being a member of Barflies for 5 months. Good to have you in. The Neck Pour, I'm pretty sure that you also have a YouTube channel on the go right now. I hope it's going it's still going well. I haven't been in recently to see any of the recent stuff. I have been, and I need to apologize to a lot of people out there that I'm delinquent on replying to messages and things. I did a lot of catching up today. So there's a few of you got 2 and 3 replies in the one session. I just found a pocket of time to just hit it all and try and catch up a bit. But since I left you last week and the Permashelf session, you can see the Permashelf is still here over my shoulder. It's not even been cleared away. I've just been going flat out doing various different bits and pieces here, there and everywhere. And it's meant that work has just been, I'm very delinquent. That's the best way to put it. Reb Mordecai's in. Good to see you, buddy. Good evening. And Muzzle Toffee saying, new granddaughter born yesterday evening, mother and daughter doing well. Thank God. My congratulations to you. It's always wonderful to hear that everyone's doing well as well, buddy. Muzzle Toff to you and congratulations, Reb. Cheers. Great to see you, Roy. I've been able to find find a few peated I love. You're smoking among them, but nothing like our friend Frank. Yeah, we're not. Nobody's as crazy into peat as Peathead Frank, right? Look at what's left of my smoking. I do have another bottle. You can see it over my shoulder up there. But every bottle I've opened of this gorgeous, super dense stuff, when you get a taste for this, I think it's difficult for you to reach past and pour other things. Every time I open one of these, it disappears very, very quickly. You can see my backup is sitting there. But these are still available for sale, $79.95, I think they are, 80 quid. So I might have to pick up a wee bottle of my own whiskey. I'm getting through it too quickly, Drew. I'm glad you're enjoying it, buddy, and it's nice to have you in. The Grain of Malt, James is saying, even Aquavite, always good to see you. Next week is bound to be a corker. Sad I won't make it this year, but those drams announced for the occasion look spectacular. That's right, they were already teasing the Springbank releases. Hazelburn Long Row, Kilchoman, 7-year-old triple distilled as well, a 30-year-old Springbank. I think it's a 7-year-old Hazelburn as well. Or is it the Long Row that's 7 years old and an older Hazelburn? Can't remember. But they all look good. Depending on how the funds are will dictate what I pick up next week. Sure, Kitty's saying, I'm thinking I need to get something straight from the cask. Doesn't it need to be straight from the cask? But it's a good idea, Jeff. Nice to have you in, buddy. Gary Field is saying, lovely peated Bamor 21 at SMWS tasting on Wednesday. There's Bamors popping up everywhere right now. It's great to see. Jesper is saying, evening, Roy. Last week, the Bonaccord coming up. Going to Fasheel the day it shuts, but we'll make sure to head in on Tuesday. Lots of memories made in that pub. Absolutely, Jesper. I'm coming back early from Fasheel. I'm coming back early in the Saturday morning. And one of the main drivers for that is to be there at the Bon on the 23rd. It's the last night. They're doing half price of the gantry, so all of the open bottles will be sold off at half price by the jam, I imagine. And then tomorrow evening, which is Friday the 15th, there's just a few of us, just a handful of us, just meeting up for a wee relaxed mental health break, a wee quiet night in the Bonaccord, just to kind of marinate in it a little bit and just kind of remember all the evenings, all the people that we've met, all the kind of laughs, hugs, handshakes, drams that type of thing. We're meeting in the Bon Accord tomorrow night. If you're free tomorrow night, you want to come along to the Bon Accord, please come along, come up and say hello, hang out with us for a wee night. There won't be many of these nights left. The 23rd is the big party, and then the following Tuesday, I think, is when they hand the keys in. MJ Rodney saying, evening around Barflies, Peatfest, kids are asleep, and birthdays tomorrow. It's almost like I meant it. MJ, many happy returns. I've been trying to celebrate my own birthday as well recently. I did a not bad job of it. I hope you get a chance to do the very same, MJ. Nice to have you, buddy. Many happy returns. Way behind on the chat. Doodle Dram, Arnie's in. Carl F is here. Good to see you. Jimmy Leg chatting away. Big Jimmy Jazz is here too. Jimmy, so great to see you. Peter Lee is in earlier than usual tonight. Good to see you. Peter Gordon Bunniston is also here. Every time I touch it, it jumps. Jeff Whiskey celebrating being a member for the Barflies for 22 months. And he's saying, cheers to you, Roy. Cheers right back at you, Jeff. It's wonderful to have you in, buddy. Last week, Jeff and I recorded a hell of a long session. He's currently editing it just now. I think he's going to chop it up into 2 or 3 or 4 or more pieces. I don't know how many episodes. A chat between him and I. It's always great fun to hang out, buddy. But thank you for your support as a Barfly over the months. He's coming into years now. Paul Gids is here too, celebrating being a member for 7 months, saying evening, Roy, and everyone. And Black Coolin celebrating being a member for 40 months, saying, I'm Pete blind like Roy, can't find it when I should. We're going to talk about that imminently, buddy. But Black Coolin, Paul Gids, Jeff Whiskey, the Neck Pour, and everyone that's signed up using the button below and YouTube to be a member of the Barflies keeps all the Aquaviti content completely ad-free. Plus, you get access to all those channel-themed emojis, loyalty badges, that type of thing. It works perfectly. Looking forward to a few well-earned whiskey days off next week. See you then, it says Andy, and Major Nut is saying Barflies and all other whiskey folks day off tomorrow, so we'll stay a while with an Ardnahoe cast strength in the glass. Major Nut, I want to thank you, and I want to thank everyone that is dedicated enough to pick this up on the replay. It really, really means a lot to me. I know I spend a lot of time havering and monologuing. I'm quite verbose, but the first 15 or 20 minutes of the vPub, just letting everyone get settled and welcoming people in. What's the point of doing a live stream if you don't actually interact with the people that are there hanging out with you live? Whiskey with Molly, my pal Ben. I touched it and it jumped, Ben. Good evening, Roy saying, and good evening, whiskey folk. Nice to have you here, buddy. Oh, I like to empty a gantry, says Jimmy Leg. It'd be a very slow pace the way you go about things, right? I thought the straight from the cask meant Belechin. Okay. Belechin. Perfect. Jeffrey Bangers is saying, how's it going, Aquavit and Barflies? I'm only live for a bit, but I'll catch everyone later on in replay. Cheers. I'll be pouring a Port Askig cast strength and an Ardbeg cast strength. Right on theme. Fantastic. And that's the last time I'm going to wind back. I'll try and keep up with the chat as much as I can, but it's jumping all over the place. But Bowman's in saying hello. Ginger Genius John is here. Fantastic. Yarek Luth, that looks like. Yarek Luz. He's celebrating being a barfly for 12 months, and he's saying it's unusual for me to see you live, Roy. Cheers. Well, Yarek, you've been a member for 12 months. It's the first time I've welcomed you here. It's nice to be able to catch you tonight. It's nice to be able to welcome you live, buddy. Yes, but he's saying might pop in for a few if time allows before heading up to Firhill to hopefully see Partick Thistle take another step forwards towards Premiership football. Fingers crossed for you, Jesper. Football has been absolutely crazy in Scotland the last few weeks. It's a spectacle that everyone is looking upon right now. It's pretty fascinating stuff. Glenn Duncan is saying, shout out to Alistair McPhail for the heads up for the Ardmurchan tasting here in Hobart with Conor McKenzie. Great fun. It would have been great fun. Connor's always a good host, Glenn, and it's nice that the community was able to kick in to point it out to you. That's brilliant. Nice to have you here, Glenn. Bob Sanders saying, evening, Roy. Had to pour a dram of Glasgow peated. Great stuff. Fantastic, Bob. Right on theme as well. Let's raise a wee glass to somebody who's having a birthday. I've not spotted his name in. He doesn't always catch the vPub, but he's a good friend of mine and he's part of our community. But today is the birthday of Mr. Chris Moore. He joins us regularly on our whiskey trips here, there and everywhere. He's often up in Scotland, but I always like having him around. And it's nice to raise a wee glass to say, Chris Moore, happy birthday, fella. Cheers. Okay. Good stuff. I'm going to do what I normally do, and I'm going to use banners to try and keep me on track a wee bit tonight, just to kind of help me mark the chapters and things. So if you're picking this up on the replay, hopefully I've managed to do my housekeeping this week, and you'll see that on the timeline below, usually I get to it on Friday afternoons, is going to be chopped up into chapters so that you can go ahead and skip ahead to things that you might be more interested in or whatever. But, you know, some resolution and detail is lost in the speedy scrubbing, so to speak. However, I'll use it tonight. And the first thing I'm going to talk about, and I think it's a wee bit of a confession, a wee bit of a tip, and also just a wee bit of an open discussion. I noticed that someone else in here tonight, Black Coolin, was talking about peat blindness. Well, I'm sitting here sipping a calibrator tonight. The first thing that's in my glass is completely unpeated. No peat has been near this malt whatsoever. No peat has been near this barley whatsoever, because this is not all malt. But it's not all a blend either. Let me explain. The reason I want to talk about this is I want to talk about peat blindness, and that thing where you start to go about your whiskey and you just snort your nose a whiskey and you start to see what jumps out the glass first. So you try and just clear your mind, clear your palate, everything, and just what's this kind of whiskey giving me? What's the first thing? And sometimes it's quiet and closed. Sometimes it's quite vivid and loud and shouty. But then the next thing you go for is what's the first thing? Is it more fruit forward? Is it more spirit forward, grain forward? You know, is it smoky? Is it not smoky? Is it sherry cask? Is it bourbon cask? Kind of all these wide kind of buckets. You're kind of going into the broad brush stuff to begin with. Unless it's expressing quite vividly and precisely to you. For instance, this one tonight, this one's got some really quite sharp green fruits, green apple, unripe melon, but it's got lots of creamy grain going on as well. It's almost noses like a plate of cold, creamy porridge, which I know is really weird to say, but that's what I'm talking about. So, you know, a kind of oats, biscuity oats, that type of thing. But I need to tell you what it is, and I need to explain why I'm sipping this first. Sometimes I'll do that to a whiskey, and it'll be a peaty whiskey, either light peat, medium peat, or even heavy peat, and I will not detect the peat whatsoever. I know I don't mean I can't smell it when it's pointed out to me, but even when someone points it out to me, depending on the condition of my nose and palate, even at that point, I might not believe you that there's peat in the whiskey. Now, that's a weird thing. And if you're going to listen to me praise whiskies and talk about whiskies and give notes and whiskies and things, I can imagine that you would respond to that with some incredulity. You'd say, what? Wait a minute. This guy, should we be listening to this guy? Should we be sharing drams with this guy? Should we be, you know, when he says this whiskey's good or whatever, should we even care if he can't even smell peat? Well, I want to always lead with honesty, and I come at everything from the point of view of a kind of consumer, a customer, a punter, somebody on the enthusiast side of the exchange. Everything that I do is always going to be from that angle, and that gives me this position where I'm never going to stand up and say I am an expert. I'm not even going to try and spend too much time defining me or my capabilities or anything like that. I just want to enjoy the liquid. And if that means talking about all aspects of the liquid, even when it's tricky to talk about it, I want to be able to do that. So when I smell and taste and I don't get peat, that it's just a function. It's just something that's happening. And I know that I'm not alone. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to share something with you now. The more I talk about this, the more people are starting to open up a little bit and say, you know what, see that peat blindness thing that you talk about? I get it all the time. Somebody points out green apple to me, I can get green apple, no problem. But if somebody says to me, are you getting peat on this? I'm not even sure. And this is happening more and more and more. And I'm not talking about people that are early in their journey that just come into whiskey. They're like magical peat detectors. They can pick up Highland Park peat at 40 paces. That smells super smoky to them. But when you've been into whiskey for a while, peat smoke and certain overt aspects of whiskey changes over time. Maybe something similar would be if you first come into whiskey, you were trying to enjoy whiskey and you were curious about it or whatever, there would have been this generic whiskey taste and smell that you would have got from almost every whiskey that you picked up. I kind of remember that being a phenomenon, but I can't tell you what that smell and taste is like today. I've got a vague memory of it, but for me, every glass is really quite different. Or I have these huge, this spread of categories of styles and things in whiskey that I smell that makes them all very, very different. However, my brain, over the months and over the years that I've been into whiskey, has just decided that it can ignore that smoke thing, that it can get past that. Now, I do notice that when I have a lot of peaty whiskies, so if I go to Fisheel, if I spend a tour on Isla, if I go to Camden Mott's Festival, if I spend time just going through, I'm in the mood for peaty whiskies, so I'm drinking peaty whiskies, that's when it hits me hardest. That's when I find that I'm cancelling out the peat smoke. So it does definitely work for me to switch off and avoid peat for a few days, a few weeks, if at all possible. And then it does come back again. But I also find that I'm not always in control of it. Sometimes it'll just be, wow, that's peaty, and I smell it and I can say that it's peaty. And other times I don't always detect it, certainly not up front. So it is a thing. It's definitely a thing that affects me. And I know that I'm not alone in that. I don't think it's the majority. I think it is a minority thing. But I think if you do suffer from that, it doesn't really get in the way of your enjoyment. It's only really a hurdle if you're some kind of whiskey analyzer, right? And you need to know immediately by nosing and tasting how much peat is in a whiskey, how much smoke is in there. Anyway, what I'm doing tonight is I'm kind of setting myself up, setting up my palate, and I'm calibrating my palate a little bit with something that's completely new to me, but very clean and pure and completely unpeated. And I want to share with you that what it is. But RB Milk is saying, hi Roy, I'm enjoying a dram of the Glasgow 1770 unpeated 8-year-old all bourbon cask. Cheers, Brian. Is that the Aquavite bottling? Hey, Brian, I hope you're enjoying it, buddy. And RB Milk, doesn't even start with B to help me remember. How will I remember that you're Brian? I'll just need to do my very, very best, buddy. But thank you for the generous dram. And if that is the Aquavite bottling, you're not going to get any peat in that because it's completely unpeated, but you're going to get heaps of concentrated fruit. For me, a lot of the fruit in that glass is confectionery fruit, like wine gums, American hard gums, fruit sweets. Cheers, Brian. Thank you. Arnie's saying, one of my favourite types of peat is the estery, almost metallic kind in some young whiskies. Preteen Colila is so cool, like that. For years, everybody's been talking about how if they do get a peat kind of streak on, they tend to find themselves being sated best by sipping at young single-digit age statements. A perfect example, Arnie, would indeed be a Colila. And Brian is saying, yes, it's excellent. That's wonderful. Superb. Okay, let me share what I'm sipping tonight. Although the 8-year-old Glasgow 1770 bourbon cask would have been a perfect pick to set my palate up. But here's an interesting whiskey. It comes in a tube, but we don't need to see the tube. It was just delivered today. So, we really need to, we're not going to review or jump into this whiskey too much, but it's very, very interesting to me. This is the latest release from Loch Lomond. This is a distillery edition. They're already up at number 11 now for distillery edition. Look at that age statement on there. 4 years old, 2021. This is cask strength at 59.6% ABV. This is a strange thing, isn't it? Strange thing. 4 years old, limited edition. What's this about? Well, notice that it doesn't say single malt whiskey on the label. It says single grain whiskey. I hinted at this already. This is 70% malted barley and 30% barley, unmalted barley. Now, they specify that the 70% malted barley is unpeated, but they don't mention whether it's peated or unpeated on the unmalted because they're not kilning it. They're not malting it. So there's You know, if peat is being used to dry the barley post malting to kind of freeze it in time, they're not going to need to do that if the grain hasn't been malted in the first place. It's not been steeped, it's not been laid out on a malt floor or put in a malting drum or whatever, and whatever method they've used to malt it. It's not going through that process. It's as is, unmalted barley. Now, it's a very, very common style, made in a pot still in Ireland, single pot still Irish. It's a mix of malted and unmalted barley as an example. But in Scotland, it's disappeared. It hasn't been a thing in Scotland for probably close on a century. But there would have been a time that there would have been a lot of unmalted barley used in whisky production. Excuse me. As time went on, the focus obviously moved to column still distillation, using any grain that they like, and it would just be grain whisky that's coming out. And there are cheaper ways to do that than using barley, using wheat or corn. And then the malted barley that was making the single malts, which was the seasoning ingredients, which would give the layers and the body and the flavors to the blends. So the unmalted thing has really not been a thing, but this distillery edition series from Loch Lomond is a kind of almost like a pet project that betrays the kind of geekiness, the playfulness, the curiosity, and the passion, and kind of maybe the more creative side of Michael Henry, the master blender at Loch Lomond. And these are very quiet under the radar releases. They just get quietly put on the Loch Lomond website. When they appear, the noise starts, the chatter starts, people pick them up. They're always wonderful value, small outturn. This is only 400 bottles, I think. Just a wee tickle in my throat. Why does it always happen on the vPub? Because I'm chatting so much, probably. This one is 4 years old because this is all about spirit character in this. They've even matured it in refill casks. They really want the cask influence on this to be very light. You can see how pale this whiskey is. I hope you can see how pale that is. I've got a white piece of paper here I can hold up, and hopefully you can see just how very, very pale, kind of white wine colour. So refill casks, only 4 years old, 59.6% ABV, £39 delivered, if you're in the UK, of course. Apologies if you're outside of the UK, but all of the distillery editions have been a bit like this. This is just a wonderful, geeky thing to have in your collection. It really, really focuses fully on spirit. It's all about spirit. So many of the Loch Lomond projects are spirit forward, as we know. We love that it's here, but my experience with this in the glass so far is quite sharp green and yellow fruits. As I mentioned earlier, lots of kind of a biscuity oat-like quality. It's really like an oat biscuit. And the reason that I'm drawn to talking about oats is because of that kind of creaminess that it's given up as well. There's citrus in here, yellow citrus. And there's always, it doesn't matter what style of Loch Lomond I get, grapefruit from it. And it's here in this glass too. But the big thing about this whiskey is the palate. Let me explain. Anyone, I've put water in this and it's still there. Anyone that's familiar with single pot still Irish whiskey will know that unmalted barley adds a whack of an oiliness to it, a gloopiness, a weight, this kind of smothering texture that lands on your palate, coats your teeth even. It really amps up that oiliness there. And that's what's happening in this glass. And I suspect the reason they've put this out at 4 years old is to give everybody full access to that. Now, I'm confident that they will try to mature this style of whiskey going forward and bring it out at older age statements in the future. And if they're doing that in quiet casks, refill casks, so much the better. Yet again, another project that makes me very excited about Scotch whisky's future. But right now, if you're in the UK, if you have the ability to deliver some of this to the UK right now, it's a no-brainer to pick it up. Cask strength, 4-year-old experimental unique whisky for £39. Like all the distillery releases, it's super, super fair. This is tonight's calibrator. As I share and confess my peat blindness to you. What I should have done, should I put up a wee poll and just ask you the question, do you suffer from peat blindness? Do you or have you suffered? Suffered is the wrong word, but let's go with it. Let's go with it. And yes, no, and on occasion, because it's not always black and white, is it? And I'll start that wee poll just to get some feedback from you. Now, imagine that the people that are a bit like me and suffer from peat blindness is probably going to be quite small, I imagine. But we've got that on occasion option in there as well. So just be truthful, be honest, and say, yeah, this is all anonymous. Well, I don't see who's voting, so you don't need to worry about that type of thing. You can only vote once. So vote straight, vote honest, and we'll see what the answer comes out at. David Owen, good to see you, David. He's saying, evening, Roy, on theme tonight with a signatory vintage 15-year-old Ballechin or Ballechin. I think it's Ballechin. First fill bourbon barrels. Fantastic, David. Hope it's going down well. Billy Bennett, 75, saying good evening, Roy. I'm starting up with a peated Norwegian whiskey from Meakin Distillery. Fantastic. On point. Hope it's going down well, Billy. You are up there in Norway, aren't you? Reb is saying, I wonder if anyone has made a whiskey from malted wheat distilled in pot stills. I've seen other malted grains, sure. I can't recall one that's been... I don't know how well wheat responds to malting. Do all grains malt? Is it difficult? Is it tricky? But I've seen malted rye and other malts and things out there. David is saying on this day it is important to talk about peat moderation. From my peatier periods, I leaned as peat was everything to me until I started to become desensitized to it. Rest fixed it. David, I think that's exactly what I'm talking about. The problem with trying to rest and desensitize yourself to it is that you miss some of your favorite, most delicious whiskies. You can still taste how great they are without appreciating that it's peat that's bringing a lot of that to your palate, right? It's a weird thing. Ginger Genius is saying in a glass tonight, our Big 10, Laga 12, Lefroy 10 cast strength, and a Lefroy 14 handful. On point, but my taste buds are ruined. I know that you have 4 glasses lined up and it's not all like a mega peat blend that you've got going on there in the glass, right, John? And PD Drummer, Craig, good to have you in, Craig. Hey, I don't know if it's the first time I've welcomed you. I'm definitely in the peat blind camp. As a self-confessed Octomore and Torveg fanboy, I find it difficult to find at low or mid levels. I completely get you, Craig. Pedro in Brazil is saying, tasted an amazing peated rye from Kiro, Aquavite, and yes, you theory. Make a Dram Decision is saying, Aquavite, when I have some peat blindness, I find I can still smell it, but not smell it. I think he means can still smell it but not taste it, or taste it but not smell it. Sometimes what happens is you don't pick it up with the nose, but it hits you on the palate. Absolutely. Master Chief Sea Chest, that's Mark. He's saying, should we start a registered charity to aid sufferers of peat blindness? No, there's an easy cure for it, and it doesn't take money. It just takes a wee bit of discipline. Black Cullen is saying, looks like we, the peat blind, we're the minority. I fully expect that to be the case. Sorry, jumped a wee bit again. I think I've got everyone though. Let's have a wee look at the poll to see what you're referencing there. Oh no, it's not that bad at all. In fact, it's not the minority. It's split 50-50. People that are saying no, they don't suffer from it is 50%. 14% committing to yes. I would write, do you suffer or have you suffered from peat blindness? I would type yes would be my answer. So I'm in the minority at 14. But on occasion, it's 36%. So yes, and on occasion makes up half. I'll leave the poll going for a little while, see if that changes much. But that's actually quite a surprise to me. I expected that the no would be much, much higher than that. So maybe it's a wee bit more prevalent than we imagine. And so I think it's better for me to talk about it and make people not feel that they're somehow flawed or rubbish at something because they trip up over a lack of peat detection at times. Usually I can feel any peaty smokiness when the whiskey is from low ppm malt. Says Fairnight Walker. That's right. Highland Park for me, sometimes I'm not going to get any peat whatsoever. Martin is saying, maybe 1 dram out of 10 Benromac, I will notice peat. Benromac is also a very tricky one. JW Black, I struggle to find peat. Same for me on JW Black. Benromac does have other traits, though, that can mean I find myself occasionally able to pick out a Benromac, but it's not the peat that helps me. Pedro is saying, theoretically, you could malt any grain aquavitae, although it might not be worth it. Dornpass Whiskey saying, Phil and Deepa, who have incredible palates, are notoriously peat blind. Leipzig 10 and Port Charlotte 10, they didn't get any peat when tasting blind. This is why I love these people so much, because they don't care about, they just go on blind, like almost everyone that's in the YouTube space is comfortable doing this now. Going in blind, sipping blind, hanging out, talking about what you got, and not feeling shame or not feeling like you're somehow lesser or weaker because you didn't pick up all the notes or whatever. Phil and Deepa are just epic humans. Jesper is saying, have you been along to the distillery in Liss? Dropped in a few months ago and was very impressed. I've not been along yet, Jesper. I keep forgetting your name doesn't always remind me that you're local here, but of course you are, buddy. Glennis Maid is in saying, I think the issue is probably due to damage to olfactory tissue within the nasal glands. Peated whiskey contains an enzyme that leaches oils and then into the nasal glands. Listen, there could be truth in that. But the last time I had a curry, I literally asked them at my favourite takeaway place to make it spicier. I asked them if the chef had changed, if it was being made milder. And the guy assured me it's still him that makes it, and he makes it the same way that he's always made it. And he told me, he said, you need more spice because you're having too much spice. And I think it's a little bit the same. I would say that peat smoke just don't overpower all the other notes like they do for some people. They just add a dimension to a whiskey. So that's where you are just now, Jimmy, buying me a dram to say that as well, buddy. Thank you so much. And finally, then I saying, I also suffer from peat fatigue on occasion where I feel I can't face a really peaty whiskey. And they just come back to me. And sometimes you don't control it, right? Sometimes you take a break and things like that and you still suffer a wee bit. And then another night you turn up and you're everything with peat in it, you're picking out. Sean Cozzer is saying, I've currently been drinking 11 Souls, but more blind. I would have picked a peat, to be honest. Perfect, Sean. Perfect. Black Coolin is saying, and when you get into this topic, peaty, smoky, or phenolic. That's right. Peaty and smoky is down to, that's a bit of the, and phenolic. When you start to use those words to differentiate the experience of peatiness, of smokiness, of kind of those phenolic qualities, it starts to become a little bit subjective. And I think we always have to rely on some padding language around it to kind of help articulate what we mean to differentiate when we choose to use smoke and when we choose to use peat. Jim Morse is saying, some people are overly sensitive or maybe extremely sensitive. My wife can smell and taste peat in a whiskey that's not supposed to have it. Absolutely, I get that too. I often will put my whiskey under the nose of my kids or my wife and say, are you getting any smoke on this? They can pick it out. All curries served Shea Widdowson are spicy, says Andy. One day I'll get to try them, right, buddy? All right. Let's get on to the first whiskey now that we've calibrated our palate, now that we've confessed to some peat blindness. Let's see if we get any peat blindness in this. Now, I'm going to get into some special drams. The first one isn't what you would call super special or anything, but not on Peatfest last year or the year before. I picked up one of these, and I'm sure, I think it was on the top 10 10-year-olds. I think that was the topic. And I wanted to point out that the whiskey that was put into the glass was actually 10 years old because it was very quiet about it. And it was stated in very small letters. It was the annual release from Kilchoman. It was their Loch Gorm. So I've picked up this 2026 edition. All Loch Gorms are at 46% ABV, but I picked this up at Good Spirits Company this very day. Now, the reason I went for the Loch Gorm is that the same as last year, it is still, for the first time ever, 2 years consecutively, 10 years old. Now, you might remember that last year I made a bit of a fuss about how humble they were almost. Why were they not advertising the fact that it was 10 years old in a much more obvious way? Why was there not a big number 10 on the bottle? Why wasn't there a big number 10 on the box? Well, we have the box here, and you can see it's not because they listened to me. I think they just worked it out. There's a big number 10 on the box now. And the bottle itself, because that box is going straight in the bin after this evening, on the bottle itself, you can see here a big number 10. I mean, it's still not kind of front and center, I would say. It's still quite quiet, quite humble. And I think that's maybe because Kilchoman will continue across the path with it being a yearly release of its switching. In the past, we've had non-age statement, non-age statement, and non-age statement. In recent years, we started to see like an 8-year-old appearing, or a 9, or a various other ages coming out. But I have to tell you, we're talking about peat blindness. This whole place, if anyone walked into this room right now, the first thing that would hit them would be peat smoke. It's very pungent, it's very strong, it's very, very smoky. Thick aromatic smoke. I would use peat to describe this smoke, because I think that the sensation that it's given me is an earthy, farmy quality, rather than a kind of smoke on the air, grass fires, peat fires, blue smoke, ash, that type of thing. This is coming out like earthy, farmy, thick, leaning a wee bit in a kind of barbecue vibe, I would say. Now that I've said barbecue, I'm going to struggle to get that out my head. It's almost like got this marinade quality. It's got soy, but there's a sweetness to it as well. So maybe like a almost teriyaki type thing. Teriyaki's a good shout, actually. So it's kind of got that sweet and salty, thick, heavy barbecue side to it. There's a nice raspberry red fruit confectionery fondant type thing in here as well. So that's leading me into chocolate. You can easily find chocolate in this, dark chocolate. Nutty quality. So you can see immediately, despite that big cloud of smoke that filled the desk, filled the air in front of me as soon as I put this in the glass. Nose into the glass, 46%. It's very easy to get your nose in the glass. And there's loads and loads of other things there. This is quite mouth-watering. Now, the reason that I reached out for this, because I think there was 2 10-year-olds on the shelf for Kilchoman when I was in the shop. There was a Loch Gorm, and I'm trying to remember what the other one was. Another special edition, I think. But I went for Loch Gorm because of how much I vividly remember enjoying uncorking the 2025 edition. Okay, cheers everyone. I'm still going to go with my favourite Kilchoman being in bourbon cask. It just is. When you get a clean Kilchoman, a well-made one where the fruit is forward, when you get that fruit and smoke together from bourbon casks, that's my favourite style. The batch strength, I think, is excellent. I love the Machier Bay cask strength. I enjoy Machier Bay. But Sanig is very good with a wee bit of sherry in there. The Loch Gorm is a different animal altogether. This is 100% fully matured, spent all its life in sherry casks. Specifically on the box, it tells us that it's from Jose and Miguel Martin. Spanish, isn't it? So it's not Martin, it's going to be Martin. So we even know the provenance of the casks that this stuff goes into. No sulfur, no sour edges, no mushroom edges. It's clean and bright. The only thing that takes it into a slightly funky edge is a kind of slightly mulchy, farmy quality. I always say farmy about Kilchoman, and it's crazy, right? Because of course it's farmy, it's a farm distillery, but it's not what I mean. There's a very, very definite farmy edge to Kilchoman Spirit. And it's here, a wee bit of wet leaf mulch, that type of thing. This is 10 years old. Last year's was 10 years old, and that's the point I wanted to make about this with the coming of age thing. But my experience tonight, and I'm tempted to go and find last year's bottle, but I won't. My experience tonight is that the last year's 2025 release was much more impactful on the sherry side. I think what we've got here is a much more balanced take. We've got much less impact from those sherry casks, which is not necessarily a bad thing. So we've got a wee bit more of the spirit shining through. Still bringing bags of smoke. My palate is saturated with smoke and peat right now. The whole thing is quite a phenolic experience. You know you're in that territory. There's even a sense of a kind of tar on the finish now. Cigarette smoke. Not heavy on sherry though. It's still got quite a rich colour to it. It's very copper in tone. The camera doesn't always pick it out, the colour, accurately, but this is kind of a slightly red highlights through a copper. But I think even in colour, it might not be as dark as previous batches. Who knows? I should probably just go and get last year's and compare it. My goodness. Excuse me for 1 second. Apologies. Maybe should have thought about this beforehand. This is a dusty bottle. If I'm holding this up to the camera, it should be given a wee polish. It's been ignored, actually. I had to reach into the back for this one. So you can see there isn't, the number 10 on this isn't really displayed. But in small writing there, it does say, in red font, it does say, 10 years old, 2025 edition. So let's have a look at the colour. Yeah, this one's a wee bit darker. Not by much, but I don't know if you can see that on camera there. The 2025 is a wee bit darker. I'm going to put it in the same glass. I hope you'll forgive me. I've only got 6 glasses out tonight, and we'll be pouring, well, it was going to be 6 whiskies, now it's 7. So I'll just kind of have a wee sip of water, pretend it's a festival, right? The other nice thing about pouring a dram into a whiskey glass that's had a wee bit of water to rinse it out is the wee drops of water in the glass can often help it along quite nicely. Just a wee touch of this. I can even see in the glass that it's darker. Now, that doesn't really, we don't really care about colour in whiskey, do we? Sometimes we sip with our eyes up, of course we do. And some of us are drawn to certain styles and colours of whiskey. The majority of us tend to be drawn to, sorry, I've just had that disappear. Just open that back up again. Tend to be drawn to darker styles of whiskey. What a difference, my goodness. So there's not a lot out of this bottle. You know, I've taken it barely past the shoulder. And I don't know how many months ago I opened this. Let's guess, 8 months, something like that. But it's not had a lot of attention since, which is a shame because I know that I love this whiskey. But this is much, much fruitier, softer. And I think a lot of that's going to be to do with being open a wee bit longer, perhaps a wee bit to do with the fact that we've got a wee bit more cask influence here. maybe just more active casks in this batch. Listen, these bottlings are only, 12, 14, 15, 18,000 of that order. So the batch variation is going to hit. Quite a difference. Quite a difference. Peat smoke is much more integrated. It's still there, but it's much quieter. This is a fruitier, softer, juicier style of whiskey. I think this year's one is a little bit more sharp and dry. Bear in mind, I've just opened the 2026, whereas the other one's been open for a while, and that does make a difference in many, many whiskies. But this is why I can see immediately why I was drawn to this. I think this year's has got a much more balanced spirit cask balance to it. But Loch Gorm is all about just indulging that kind of decadence and richness of the sherry cask. And I think that maybe last year's captures that a wee bit more. However, my takeaway from this is a huge, huge, huge improvement. This is a wonderful thing. Why is it a wonderful thing? That's 2 years in a row now, consecutive years, that backs up my suspicion when I first opened the 2025 10-year-old that Kilchoman are gradually, finally getting on top of stocks enough that they're managing it to the point that that's 2 years in a row that we've got a 10-year-old Loch Gorm out. And then the second year, we've put the 10-year age statement on the box and the bottle in a big number. Does that mean in the future that we're guaranteed to have Loch Gorms coming out as a 10-year-old? Will it almost be like an annual age release? A 10-year-old from Loch? I don't know. I really don't know what their stock profiles are. I don't know what their plans are. But I would suggest that that's hinting towards that being the case. If they bring it out next year and call it a 9-year-old or an 8-year-old again, or bump it up to an 11 or a 12, who knows? That would be nice to see too. But we might be getting close to the stage where Kilchoman can start to bring out age-dated products. Can I tell you the problem with this whiskey now? And it was a problem when I opened it last year, and it's a problem this year as well. Let me tell you. Glennis May has bought me a dram. Thank you so much, Glennis, again. It's mineralic versus metallic for me. Kalila versus Ardbeg. Kalila is more metallic, which is where I get the barbecue meat, earth, and metallic are more brine. It's wonderful how we can weave all of these different aspects into what is a peaty, smoky whiskey. For me, Kalila's got this lovely kind of lemony quality. Briny, I would give you that, absolutely. I would give you a mineralic edge to it as well. Ardbeg has always got this cold blue, ash-like smoky quality to it, with lemon in there as well. But it's just ever so slightly different. Now, if you were to put an Ardbeg and a Kalila in front of me and in isolation and tell me which is which, I don't know what my hit rate would be. Not great, right? But if you were to give me one beside each other and say, one of these is Ardbeg and the other one is Kalila, I think my hit rate might pop up a little. Maybe I'm being overly confident and naive there. Fair Night Walker is saying, for me, Peat turns down that extra sweetness from sherry casks, but preserve all those dark woody notes that I really enjoy. That's the reason why Peat and sherry works very good. I agree with you. Peat and sherry, when it's done well, can be magical. There's a bottle I'm going to open tonight that I hope it lives up to my memory of it, because it was just the most magical, dialed up to 11 peat sherry experience that I can remember. Perfectly done. Inverurie Whiskey Shop, good to see you, Mike. He's saying, even all favourite peated whiskies, a well-matured Ardmore. Can't convince me that anything can beat it. Aquavita, interesting to hear what you think of Highland Peat. The last Peatfest that we did, I might be wrong on this, it might be the last but one, was Highland Peat, Mike. I'm trying to recall if we had an Ardmore in the lineup. If we didn't, I've been hell of a remiss. But if I have missed it, we can catch it in the next Peatfest. Okay, Bunny? Good to have you. And Andy's saying, only an hour and flagging already, pulling my early pup. Listen, I'm here to take care of all your insomnia needs. It's my job, Andy. Take yourself off to bed, pull your early parachute, get some rest, and we'll see you in the tune next week. Catch the rest on replay, saying slant you, and see you next week. Cheers, buddy. Sleep well. And Mike is saying, the only time I encountered peat blindness was after a 6-dram Octomore online tasting. Then people went for their own drams, and I wondered, where do we go from here? Dufftacular. So famous they should name a town after you. Oh, wait. Duffton, yeah. Duff, the name Duff is right across Scotch whisky in whisky history. I'll look at this poll again. The minority of people that suffer from peat blindness has dropped. It's become more of a minority. On occasion, 31%. Yes, 17%. So that's, what's that for? How can that be? That doesn't add up. That must be rounding, because we're at 101% if I had 17, 53, and 31. Whatever. But 53% saying no. So, I mean, it still suggests to me that in our community, peat blindness is a familiar condition for about half of us. Anyway, let's get on to the problem that I have with Kilchoman. This 10-year-old, 46% ABV, fully natural, delicious whiskey, easy to recommend, but for the price. It's still 80 quid. I mean, I think last year I paid more, but it's just because of the place that I bought it. Picked this up at Good Spirits Company at £81 today. I think it was 84 or 85 or something for last year. Don't remember. I remember complaining about it last year, and it's kind of always been in my mind that Loch would be so much easier to recommend if it was a bit better priced. Now, let's defend Kilchoman a little bit. You know, those casks, those Jose Miguel Martin casks, they're not going to be cheap casks, not at all. And doing it annually in a kind of 12, 15, 18,000 bottle outturn, you know, it's not, to them, it's not small batch. I don't think you can call it small batch, but it's not a massive outturn. So they're maybe going to see this as a limited edition, a special edition, something that they make a wee bit more margin on, and it goes out annually and it sells out annually. Fine. There's too much competition out there now. There's too much good quality, well presented, peaty whiskies. It's presented in sherry as well. People have already been in here mentioned mainland products like the likes of Ardmore from independent bottlers, that type of thing. But official stuff, talking Ardnamurchan and Ardnahoe and so many more, that I think that I would like to see a 10-year-old a bit better priced than 80 quid. Even if this was 68, 69, I feel like that's the sweet spot for this product. 80 is salty to me. Anyway, if you love your peat, and if you love peat and sherry, you like a bit of balance, and also the ABV, remember this is 46% ABV, we're not in the cask strength realms here, it's still a good whiskey. Barry Coleman is saying, hi Roy, it's Lag Coricravi in the glass tonight, a great sherry smoke. I personally love it. I know it's a Marmite whiskey for a lot of people, Barry, but it's one of my favourites. I hope you're getting, despite the sherry cask involved there, I hope you're getting that lag, oily, thick texture coming through as well. Gregor is in. Good to see you, buddy. Peatfest, like my good friend Jonesy states, less peat and more Pedro, please. Good to see you, Gregor. I hope you're keeping well. It's nice to see you drop in and say hello. Ginger Genius John is saying, love Kilchoman, but the pricing is not keeping up with the competition. That's exactly what I've just said, John. Brilliant. So we're getting a wee bit of consensus there, a wee bit of sensitivity from the community. Jimmy's saying, I have no problem with Kilchoman not buying expensive sherry casks and selling their bourbon matured whiskey for less. You and I feel the same way. I think we enjoy the bourbon side, but when we're in the mood for a sherry kick, Kilchoman fits. Greg is saying, good to see you, buddy. Okay, guys and Roy. As I'm going to review some Talisker soon in video, I'm in tonight for a tiny pour of my Indy Adelphi Fascadale 10-year-old, 46%, which is quite subtle, slancha. And Jesper is saying Glasgow 1770 peated has the thick barbecue character too. I would say that that's true. The peated cask from Glasgow, Jesper, of course, is PX sherry. So it's dialed up. It's got that thick, kind of gloopy slightly sweet. I love it, especially the cast strength version. I love recommending that one. So let's move on a wee bit, because, you know, we've talked about the potential of Kilchoman coming of age. They need to watch their pricing. I'm sure they know their business very, very well, and they're monitoring how much this year's Loch is going to sell. And if it sells out just as fast as last year, I should shut up. But I'm just saying that there's lots of competition out there today. But then I'm going to move on to share, you know, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do a wee bit of a personal story as we talk about how, for me, in my own peat journey, my own whiskey journey, Lagavulin is at fault for everything here. I'm not overstating it. I'm not using hyperbole if I was to say to you that if it was not for Lagavulin 16-year-old, you know, this channel, it would be somebody else sitting here doing this on a Thursday night or whatever. It wouldn't be me. It wouldn't be Roy. It wouldn't be Aquaviti. Lagavulin is responsible for flicking some kind of crazy switch in my mind, my understanding of whiskey, it was epiphany-like. And I've told the story in various ways before, and permission to kind of add on arms and legs and embellish here and there and adjust details. But I'll tell you, I'll always tell it honestly and as I remember it. But I'm going to share that story with you just now. Roy, I'm going to try the peat blindness excuse when it comes to footing turf this year. Doubt it will work, though. Alex B's just bought me a generous dram as well. Thank you very much, Alex. It's nice to have you in. I need something. Well, there's a wee bit of Kilchoman left, buddy, just to raise a glass to say cheers to you, Alex, and thank you for your dram. Anthony Lambert is on theme. He's saying I have an Octomore 14.2, Lag Corrie Cravie, Kilkerran heavily peated, and Miko Tor Turbo lineup for tonight. Happy days. Anthony, you're doing the Peatfest thing all on your own, buddy. You're right on point. Glennis Mary saying I'll never forgive Lagavulin for their stupidity in the last decade. It's always been heartbreaking for me because I've almost been trying to boycott Lagavulin because of this stupidity. It's the best word. It's just ludicrous opportunism and greed and cynicism and clumsiness and just daft, wild, harebrained decisions that took that perfectly pitched product and somehow managed to make it worse year after year, make it more expensive year after year, make it less impactful and appealing year after year. Anyway, I'll take you back to 2009. My wife and I have my girls. They're 18 now, but at the time, they'd have been about 1 or maybe at best 2 years old. My brother and his wife joined us for a trip up the west coast of Scotland, and we were touring around, and we're mostly based around Loch, not so far north of Glasgow, just an hour and a half or so north. And we took a trip to Inveraray for the day. And my brother has his son as a baby, but my 2 girls, they're twins, they start to get a bit restless. And I hop up to put them in the buggy and take them for a walk to just get them off to sleep for their afternoon nap. Now, my wife is much smarter than me, and she knew that my brother and I, on this walk, intended fully to go to Inveraray Whisky Shop. That was the plan. It was nothing to do with being generous and thoughtful about the girls getting their nap, and it was everything to do about me and Craig skipping off to get to the whisky shop. And she called me out on it, and then my brother's wife, Kelly, called him out on the same. And to demonstrate that that was never in our plans, we threw our wallets down. We left our wallets there and we walked off. And of course, we're walking away thinking that was silly. We fully intended to go to the whisky shop, but we went anyway, thinking we can just have a wee look and see what there is. When we arrived at the whisky shop, we're taking this double buggy through this narrow doorway, and there's money. There's change in the bottom, and the kind of tray thing that's in the bottom of the buggy. You can hear the coins. Wouldn't you know it, there were £14 in change in the bottom of that buggy. So my brother and I decide that we can buy a souvenir, like a Glencairn glass each or something like that, and that's what we're going to do. But one of us, I think it was me, found a miniature, not a miniature, a 20 cl bottle. In fact, here, this bottle, we found this on the shelf in Inverurie Whisky Shop for £12.95. That's how much this 20 cl bottle was. I wish the price sticker was still on it. We bought this, and it went in the bottom of the buggy, and we'd managed to pick up a wee souvenir. Now, we took it back to the accommodation, and we shared a dram out of it, and the cork got put back in it, and that was it. We took it back home. We cooked some fish that we'd caught when I'd got back home, and everyone went off to bed, and it was just me on my own in my home, and I picked up this Lagavulin to have a nightcap, a dram before I went to bed, and it was the last dram in the glass. I can still taste it to this day. It's so vivid in my memory, and I'm chasing that same experience over and over every time I go back. And I nosed it, and I sipped it, and I tasted it, and everything changed. I was sitting there holding this bottle after drinking whiskey for maybe 4 or 5 years casually. Just, I like whiskey, I enjoy whiskey. Didn't care to know too much about it. I just knew the basics. I knew what I needed to know and nothing more. Casual whiskey sipper. Didn't care about all the definitions, all the different distilleries. I just picked up bottles when I fancied it a whim. As long as they were Scotch whiskey, I was picking them up and just enjoying them. I sat there holding this little bottle in my hand, and immediately, viscerally, I felt like I needed to understand why what had just happened to me had happened. What was that flavor? What was that experience? This is more than just peat. It's more than smoke. This is something in this glass tastes exceptional, and it's just connected with me in a way that I have never experienced through any other alcohol or even food stuff, honestly, before. It was incredible. And from that moment on, and my family, my brother, everyone around me, my friends all bear witness to the fact, and I don't need to convince any of you, that it turned me into a fiend, a whiskey botherer, a geek, a mega enthusiast. It changed my life trajectory that moment. It certainly brought me to YouTube. And I say all that to say this. Tonight, I'm going to open a nice Lagavulin. Maybe you can choose which. Alex is saying, footing turf is stacking the peat after it being cut to dry out for burning during the winter. Back-breaking work. I used to live on a farm when I was a kid on the Kilchoman Plateau, and I did that very thing for a little while, Alex, as a 6 or 7-year-old kid. We used peat as a fire, as fuel for the fire. And when the peat ran out, you would have to, because you kept the peat in a kind of peat bunker near the house. But when that bunker ran out, you would have to go and restock it from the peat stacks, right, that were dry. But in the bottom, you would have the kind of powder, all the rubble, the dust, the peat, and with a wee bit of moisture, you could make a clump out of that and throw it in the fire. But the smoke that came from it was horrendous. Greg is saying, oh, maybe this one's probably from the 2 set boxes of 3D Azure did. There was even one set with a 20 cl Port Ellen, mind you. Oh yeah, that's right, the little taster sets that they did. Harrow is saying, good evening, Aquavidi. Finally getting a peated dram after a day of painting. You deserve it, Harrow. I hope the painting went well. Sean is saying a proper Proustian moment right there. Proustian, perhaps. I've always referred to it as an epiphany. Maybe you're right. Adrian H is saying, good evening, Roy and whiskey folks. A bit late to the party tonight. I definitely prefer mainland peat, with Balakin and Lechik being my favourite peated dram, says Adrian Hannah. Good to see you, buddy. Ginger Genius John is saying, I bought the 12 cast strength 2023 after you did, courtesy of Mr. Bezos at 55 quid. Absolute banger at that price. However, at RRP, forget it. We've talked about it at length, haven't we, John? It's disappointing, and we don't see any obvious reversal of that. We see what they're in a kind of limbo pattern just now. It's going to be interesting to see what happens to the special releases this year, because it's guaranteed, or it's probable, that we'll see a 12-year-old Lagavulin again. Glennis is saying, I still sip a Distiller's Edition Lagavulin from 1993, super special to me. Hold that, Glennis. Anthony Lambert is saying, fantastic story, great memories. This is what whiskey's all about for me. We'll sit with my Scottish mate on Saturday and share some drams I bought back from Limburg. Memories and drams shared. One of your Scottish mates, Anthony, one of your Scottish mates. Alex B is saying, we call that turf mould. So you know what I'm talking about, Alex, don't you? You know what I'm talking about. Because it needs to be damp to hold it together, it goes on the fire damp as well, and you get all that smoke from it. Anyway, Glennis, I'm going to give you a choice. I'm going to open a nice bottle of Lagavulin tonight in the hope that I can get some of that nostalgia back. This has been in my collection for a long time. This one was bottled in 2015. It's a 1999 vintage. So it's not quite as old as the Glennis made one, but it's out there, Lagavulin Distiller's Edition. So it's still 16 years old. But obviously it's got some extra maturation in here. And I think, if I remember, is this not PX casks? Maybe I should have kept the box. I'm pretty confident that Lagavulin Distiller's Edition has an extra maturation in PX. Don't quote me on that. Anyway, we could either open that, or here's another one that I've kept in my collection since. Do you remember the Magic of Isla video that's on the channel? Well, it's 8-year-old video now. It's incredible. But I bought this bottle on that trip. I was over there with my pal Bill, and this was the Fischio bottling for that year. There was plenty of it there. This was not cheap. It was over £100, but it wasn't gougingly expensive. And I got to try it, and I deemed it so tasty that I turfed out the extra money in order to be able to buy it. So let's do a quick poll, and I'll make this really quick. I'm not going to dwell on this, and I'll just ask which. I know what the answer is going to be. 2018 Fischio, or 2015 Distiller's Edition. And you guys can decide which Lagavulin I open. I think these are probably some of the most handsome bottles that exists in Scotch whisky. I absolutely love it. I love it. Even this Distiller's Edition, I think, is gorgeous. It doesn't have the kind of the pill-shaped label here that's very synonymous with Lagavulin, but it's still a very, very handsome bottle. Now, I've seen the new bottles of Lagavulin up close, and they're not ugly, they're not clumsily done. There is a bit of a kind of, you could argue for an evolution there, but the bottle shape has changed, the glass has changed, the font, everything, the layout has changed a little bit, but it is an evolution rather than a revolution. That said, I am kind of sad that we're going to lose this elegant, gorgeous, iconic. There was a beer that I enjoyed in the Bonaccord this week, and it was Augustina. It's a Helles beer from Germany. And the bottle label looked like it'd been on the label for decades, for 100 years. And it turns out that's the truth, that label has never changed, and it's infamous for it, or famous for it. And it just looked fantastic to me. It looked old, and yet somehow appropriate, and still up to date, and still relevant. And I think that there is too much fuss, too much change for the sake of it. Just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should. Sometimes you need to let things endure. How about a poll, says Mike, and Inverurie Whisky Shop? Mainland Peat versus Isla Peat is a good idea. And Glennis Maid is saying, I love that bottle, Roy. That 18 is something special. Had it on Isla at the bar around the corner from the Port Ellen Hotel. Oh my goodness, I can see where you're voting. And Island Hopper Stewart is saying the magic of Isla was inspirational. We followed you to Isla as a direct consequence. That's amazing to hear. When I did the Scotch Taste Dummies video, we actually met a couple who went on the trip that we met them on because they'd watched that video and the video inspired them to go. So they went on the trip and I was there and they were just like, what's going on? The poll is broken. There's no both option, says D. Dan. Fair play to you. Fair play. 2018 for Shield, 68%. It was always going to be that one. It was always going to be this one. Listen, this is going to be an expensive bottle for me to replace, I think. But it's been sitting in there. You know, this is one that I should have probably waited till I was with my big friend Bill to open. But I think it's probably appropriate for me to do a little bit of personal quality control and share it with you guys, albeit vicariously, to see if it's if it really bears up to our memory of how good it was before I share it with them. Eh? What do you think about that? The cork feels good, nice and strong. It's been stored well. That's superb. Let's get it into the glass. Very quiet. So let me tell you a wee bit about this 2018 for sure release. 2018, 18 years old. A 53.9% ABV, so right in my sweet spot of ABV strength. I love that kind of low 50s ABV strength. This is bottle 4638. Refill American oak hogsheads, rejuvenated American oak hogsheads, and ex-Bodega European oak butts. So I think that what we're talking about here is distillery wood, right? Even these ex-Bodega European oak butts, I would imagine, would be refill. Smoked glass, we can't really see the colour through the bottle. They may have coloured this, but I doubt it. I don't think they were adding colour to these Fashio releases. I think what we're talking about is 18 years of Lagavulin from distillery wood. Ex-Scotch whisky casks for the most part. Some of those Bodega butts may have been first fill, but I think it's unlikely. After 18 years, I expect it all to be refill. Let's get our nose into this special Lagavulin. Almost difficult to articulate, but a very obvious poise, elegance, maturity. Ooh, I want to say waxy. I'll say waxy. I'm just going to say it. There's a waxy quality to this. There is peat smoke here. I'm not peat blind to this. There's detectable peat smoke, but it's not that big blast that we got from the Kilchoman. This is like a quiet, composed. You're in a room where you're aware there is a smoke element. There is a fire in the room. The room is heated by an open fire, but it's not necessarily on. You're just in that environment. It's kind of on the soft furnishings. It's on the curtains. It's just hanging in the room, almost like, you know, aromatic, fruity pipe smoke. There is fruit here. Soft citrus, not zesty, not sharp, not super sweet. Just a soft citrus. There is a waxy quality to this. I kid you not. There's a waxiness to this whiskey. A bit of cork here. There's a cake mix, like a Madeira cake. maybe even some kind of fondant quality, like maybe a distant kind of soft marzipan. Everything is delicate here. This is the type of whiskey that you're gonna to neck pour. This is ludicrous, but it's the vPub, so we try it. Okay, I can't wait to sip this. Cheers. Oh my goodness. Oh, this is what's so frustrating when it goes out of reach and when you feel like you want to boycott it, both from stupidity, because even when it's a little bit more expensive, when they bring out something like this, it does go a little bit dry on the finish. Maybe even a little bit of acidity. It's all just so nice. Everything is just bright, that almost 54% ABV, 53.9. There's something completely soft about this. I don't know if you could pick this up and immediately go, yeah, we're at 18 or really quite mature Lagavulin, but you would be able to appreciate that it was a very, very, very well put together whiskey, or a very good single cask, you might guess, something like that. Oh, just my goodness. Oh, I might just switch the vPub off and go into a wee corner with this. This is it getting close to that memory, that story that I just shared with you? A wee bit. There's hints, there's flashes of that. It's not exactly that. I'm not having the same kind of, choir, sky-splitting epiphany type moment with it. What I'm having is just appreciation for a whiskey that was not necessarily designed to be this good, but after 18 years in regular distillery wood, there's enough of it that's been allowed to be this good. This is a dram face, easy 8 out of 10, but maybe even breaching a dram face 9 out of 10 for me. This is just... that waxy quality doesn't really translate into an oily, thick palate or mouthfeel. It's only it's not thin on the mouthfeel, but it's kind of sitting around the middle. But there is a suggestion of a kind of waxy, that there's a maturity and a poise to this whiskey that is impossible to fake. You just have to leave it in quiet wood, undisturbed, for teenage amount of years, I think, in order to get something close to this elegance, this quiet confidence, this unfortunately far too expensive style of Scotch whiskey. It's not the last of that style that we're going to have tonight. I'm putting that off to the side because I think after the vPub finishes tonight, I might just have a wee quiet moment with it. I hope you do not mind. Mikey's saying how, but Paul, I picked that one up, didn't I? Love that beer, says Gordon Burniston. We started drinking it in Berlin years back based on the label alone. Hell's Bells. That's right, the Augustina, right? I'd forgotten about it, but at Glasgow Whisky Club this week, I was with Stefan and Stefan and Ian, and they'd bought a bottle each, and I said, oh, you've tried that before, and I'd forgotten what it was called and forgot they sold it in a Bon. Stefan got me a bottle of it. It's fantastic beer for the money. Jimmy Legacy, whiskey is all about its history. Changing is always a bad idea. Changing for the sake of it, absolutely the worst idea. But there's too much of that. People in jobs, and their job is to do that. So the job is executed, and they do it, and they sell it, and they don't realize what's being lost with the changes. David is saying there are some green trash bins at the door of some stores in Lisbon with a similar round-shaped paper seal and passing by at 8 a.m. with sleep in my eye. I always get Lagavulin in mind. Excuse me. Mike said, moved my kitchen around this week, found an unopened Ardbeg Committee Black. What a dram. I remember the black. I remember it to be quite a good one as well. Maybe not Dark Cove. It's still my favourite. Nectar of the Gods says, too slow, good to have you in, Rob. It's old matches and dust from a reamed pipe for me. Oh, wow, Glennis. Yeah, you're not far away there, fella. Ian Bruce is saying, sounded like you described a Battenberg cake. Not cold. Imagine a bit of salt and brine in there then. Something to kind of bring the sweetness back a little bit. Good to see you, Ian. Jimmy's saying, funny, I'm wearing my Dramface hoodie right now. It's a 9 out of 10 hoodie. Audrey Taste saying, have another Freud cask, strength 10 with Living Souls Williamson. Oh man, that Living Souls is so good, even at 46%, smoked fudge and fabulous. Glad you're enjoying it, Barry. It's great to have you in here, buddy. Stuart is saying, your use of the English language to describe the nose of this dram is epic aquavitae. Stuart, is very rarely that anybody would ever suggest that I have the language to describe a whiskey like that. Thank you so much. But I know that I'm a wee bit of a blunt instrument when it comes to such things. But I'm very, very grateful for your nice words. Okay. So I've shared with you my wee story about Lagavulin, how it's changed everything, how much this kind of love-hate relationship I've had with it over the last kind of 7-8 years, maybe more. Certainly since I bought that 18-year-old. Where the prices have just been this cynical thing and these oddball cask finishes and nonsense and ever, you know, gilding of lilies and nonsensical silliness. The spirit that you have is beautiful. It doesn't need to be screwed around with. Look after it. Release it faithfully, price it fairly, and the legend will always be guaranteed. But, you know, you do your business and what you want to do. But now we need to move on a wee bit. I'm maybe going to take the opportunity to sidestep a little bit, because Peat has always been, in Scotch whisky terms, you know, there are other kind of smoky type spirits out there. There's certainly gazillions of smoky foods that are loved out there, you know, smoked meats. But when you realize how precious smoke and smoky whiskey is in blends, as an ingredient, as a balancing act, as something to add depth and shape and flavor to whiskey, it becomes precious. And for years, whiskey producers, especially those involved in blending and making blends, were very, very precious about their peaty stocks. And the ones that didn't have access to peaty stocks tried various different ways to get peaty stocks, to make mainland peaty distillate, to trade casks, or occasionally to come up with batshit crazy ideas in order to make peaty whiskey. I'm going to apologize. I'm calling this the weird pursuit of Peat. But when I sat with Jeff Whiskey a week or so ago to record a session, one of the whiskies, he asked me to pick my 5 best whiskies, the best whiskies I could reach out to and from my collection or whatever. It just so happened that I picked this one because then the story connected to it I find really quite interesting. It's a signature vintage. I'm going to take it out. It's tin. I keep this one in a tin because I want to keep it out of reach. I don't want to be reaching for this casually, because to replace this is hundreds of pounds. But in a remarkable gesture of generosity, I got to, this was subsidized to me. I got a bottle, a portion of this bottle was gifted to me. That's the best way I can put it. So I ended up paying much less for this than I should have. And it was so a partial gift. The whiskey that's in this bottle is ridiculously rare liquid. But it's not rare like that release, that contrived release from Macallan or from Ardbeg or whoever the hell. This is legitimately rare. Once this is gone, and it's never going to exist again. The actual definition of rare, it's never going to be made again. And let me explain why. And it's only ever from one vintage. And as far as I'm aware, it's only ever been released from Signatory vintage. This is a bottle of Craigduff. Now, the link to the last bottle I've just opened, the Lagavulin, I shared the story about my brother. Craigduff is his name. So he's actually got a whiskey named after him. Unfortunately for my brother, it's one of the rarest whiskies you can possibly try and fathom. It was only ever made for 1 year. And it was made, we believe it to have been made at Glenkeith Distillery in Speyside. And it was only ever done in 1973. So if you find Craigduff, regardless of the age statement on it, the one I've got in the bottle right now is a 40-year-old. Regardless of the age statement, you're going to realize it's a 1973 vintage. So this has been bottled for ages now. This has been about for a long, long time. This was bottled in 2013. The first time I ever purchased a bottle of Craigduff was a bottle of it in, when was his son born? 2009. So yeah, just before that trip to Inverary I told you about, I bought him a bottle of 32-year-old Craigduff. It was £120 from Royal Mail Whiskies in Edinburgh. And I got £5 off it because the silver Signatory vintage tin that it came in, it wasn't a black tin, it was the old silver tins, was dented. And they apologised and they knocked a £5 off for me, how crazy it was back in the day. So at that time, £120 was the most I'd ever spent on a bottle of whiskey for anyone at any time. And I gave it to him for his Christmas that year and the birth of his son, that nephew I told you about on the Inverary trip. My brother has still not opened that bottle of Craigduff. He's still got it sealed. So we were doing drinks by the dram. We were buying it in the little kind of drinks by the dram from Master of Malt. Over the years, I've tasted many, many, many Craigduffs. What is so crazy? Why am I calling this weird Peat? Well, this was previous. This was before Pernod Ricard. It's before Chivas Brothers, before Allied. This goes all the way back to Seagram's. And you've got to imagine a blending company that's looking after their blends. They need peaty whiskey. They need peaty stocks. And you know what? See if the drawbridge gets pulled up from their trading partner because they need more of the stock or there's less of the stock available, they're suddenly struggling to maintain the profile of their blends. So over the years, there's various ways that companies have tried to ensure their supply of peaty stocks over the years. And Craigduff ended up being a crazy, crazy, crazy way of attempting to do that. There's another distillate out there called Glen Isla. And Glen Isla is said to be the exact same thing, the exact same concept, just at a different phenols content. This was an experiment to make peaty, smoky whiskey, not through the traditional method of drying barley over peat smoke, but through smoking water. Water used in the production of the whiskey, the ingredient water rather than the cooling water or the production water. The actual water used in the making of the liquid was smoky water, smoked water that was imported on a fishing boat in 50-gallon drums from Stornoway. Now, I still haven't been able to fathom this out. How do you smoke water? What plant, what production process exists in what realm in order to smoke that scale of water? And how could that be in any way more efficient or cheaper or a shortcut, easier way to make a smoky whiskey than just buying in malted barley? I'll leave people a bit more well placed to answer those questions than me. But that's how this whiskey was made and its Glen Isla sibling back in 1973. part of what's commonly referred to in today's circles as Seagram's follies. I've just nosed that. Now, I have to caveat, I'm nosing a 40-year-old whiskey. A 40-year-old whiskey at 49.6% natural cask strength. This is from the cask strength signatories series. From a refill butt, again, distillery wood. Previously held Scotch whiskey, so it's been left in a reasonably quiet cask. But immediately we've got everything I was trying to get across to you in Lagavulin, that, but strip away the peat smoke. There's virtually, I think I could nose this. Honestly, I think I could nose this in isolation, blind, fresh, first dram of the night, and I am 80% sure, okay, 70% sure, something like that, that I may not detect any peat smoke whatsoever. What I am detecting is age. Ridiculously old books, old leather, old studies, offices, drawing rooms, gentlemen's clubs, that type of nonsense, right? That old, maybe sitting inside an old car is perfect. Leather seats, vinyl seats, sun-bleached. But then you've got these really seductive old fruits. Ripe fruits like figs, but you've also got this kind of tobacco, moist pouch tobacco. A tropicality. So those ripe fruits, they're kind of like lychee. None of them are particularly zesty, bright, sharp, or fresh, but there's a kind of sweet ripeness. A little bit fermented even. We're starting to pick up a bit of cask now, so if you dwell a while, you're getting some fudge. A little bit kind of toffee, vanilla fudge. It's just, I'm sorry I can't share this with you. I'm sorry that this is vicarious tonight. But cheers, everyone. This dram comes out very, very rarely. A little bit more detailed and communicative than the nose was going to suggest. A lovely little soft touch effervescence there. A nutty quality to it. Almost a drier edge, a drier aspect that you weren't expecting from the nose. The type of thing that you're just going to, every sip, every kind of time you take a breath, every time you recycle what you've just sipped is going to change. It's going to switch up. It's going to give you something different. It's going to give you something. It's just, you know, I said I would share special stuff with you tonight, but this is a kind of, it's not a guilty pleasure. It's a wee kind of secret special treat for me. A very good friend of mine chipped in so that I could afford this bottle. And I'm very, very, very grateful. Wonder Liquid. I think the reason that I wanted to share it with you tonight is that we're talking about Peatfest. We're talking about the pursuit of peat and the kind of lengths that certain producers were willing to go to in order to ensure peat. But honestly, if I was to just tell you the truth, I really wanted an excuse to pour a wee dram of this. And I've missed a lot of comments from you. Kyle Taylor is saying, I'm on my fourth peated dram tonight. Tiny pours though, and Aquavita's Ardnaho is the most complex pour I've had yet. Blows the compass box, Lager 8 and Ardnamurchan single barrel away. Everything else seems basic. We hit like a bullseye with that Ardnahoe. I know I frustrated a lot of people going backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards, but eventually we got that vatting so right. The irony of mentioning Jeff Whiskey and calling this section the weird pursuit of Peat Aquavitae. No irony intended. He's Jeff in our realm. Only his friends get to know him as Peat. Peatfest. Peter Lee is saying, yeah, another Peat. Peter Lee is saying, what a bottle for your brother. Absolutely. Absolutely, buddy. I couldn't believe there's a bottle literally named after him, right? A whiskey named after him. The Ginger Genius is saying Aquavitae. I always try to explain to everyone, if you like whiskey, once you go down the Peat Road, you never go back. It just takes time. Some people arrive at the Peat Road, and that's what brings them in. That's like their first call, and they just fall for it straight away. Other people are a bit like me. They need a bit more time to get their head around it. Greg in Paris is saying, that's precious, Roy, Aquavitae, enjoy. Thank you, buddy. Jesper is saying, off to Iceland in July and looking forward to finding out what Floki has on offer. Their sheep dung smoked whiskey sounds interesting. I've had it, and I found it perfectly enjoyable. I was quite young when I tried it. And I tried it across, alongside a Namibian with Roddy elephant dung smoked whiskey called Onjuba, I think it was called. Say I love my brother without saying I love my brother, Aquavitae. That's absolutely right. I do love him to seek out a bottle. I mean, I don't know how much I'd have to pay for that whiskey now. Back in 2009, £120 was bargain money, but it was a lot for me to pay. Whiskey with Molly saying you simply bubble wood smoke directly into the water. I think that must be what happens, Ben, but there must be some kind of setup or plant or factory or something that exists in Stornoway where they have to do that for kind of food production or something, seafood, or I don't know what it is. I've never got to the bottom of it. Multi-Mission said, since we're on the topic of smoke, wouldn't it be interesting to know what the hell they were smoking back in 1973? Spot on, buddy, spot on. Justin Wan is saying, not feeling so well today. We'll catch the rest on replay. Justin, I'm so sorry, buddy. Hey, you get well soon, fella. Thanks even for dropping in to say hello. I hope that you're better by morning. Sleep usually fixes all, right? Cheers, Justin. I'm worried about how much chewing is coming through the mic tonight. Cheers to Craigduff and Craigduff, both quality and improved with age. I'll try and introduce them to you this year, Jimmy. And you can let me know once you've judged. Whiskey with Molly is saying you can use a smoking gun and then freeze the water for smoky ice cubes for cocktails. Had it in a couple of cocktail bars. So I've heard about the freezing. And I think when you freeze it in a cocktail cube, it locks in the phenolic compounds, doesn't it? That's then released into the cocktail. But I know they weren't freezing it. And Greg is saying, I love my brother too, and I don't see him often, and he loves peated whiskies. So my pleasure is to save him some peated gems of my collection, even if I'll see him just once a year. Wonderful, Greg. Jimmy, thanks very much for your dram. And thanks for the nice sentiments, Greg. Cheers. I need to leave a wee bit of this and move on to the next one. I'm going to share, I know we're knocking on, we're at 1 hour 48 minutes, but it's the vPub, right? It's fine. Legendary Peat comes up next, and I know what you're thinking about Legendary Peat. You're expecting me maybe to crack out a Brora or a something or a Port Ellen, and maybe that'll happen before the end of the vPub tonight. But when I talk about Legendary Peat, what I'm talking about is a personal journey thing again. I'm talking about something that just impacted me so hard that I was like, this is just, why is this so good? And I've always struggled to define what makes it so much better than the things that I've had before. And that first happened to me in 2017 when I first started to get my head around how good. I always knew that sherry and peat was, I didn't always know, but I came to know quite quickly that sherry and peat could mix quite well together. But I started to work out that it needed to be deliberately made or happy accident. And there were lots of things around that were odd and weird and challenging and sometimes a bit awful. And just the fact that a peaty whiskey came from a sherry cask did not guarantee good quality. But I tasted guaranteed good quality whiskey when I visited Bunnahabhain back in 2018 for Shiel. You're about to find out because I'm about to open the bottle. Now, I bought a bottle of it because it was so good, but I gifted it to the Scotch Test Dummies. I gifted it to Scott and Bart. But through the generosity of this community, and I'm desperately sad about the fact that I'm not confident that I remember who gifted me the replacement bottle, but I think it was Graham Young, my friend Graham from Canada. Graham, maybe you can confirm this. And if it was somebody else and I've confused you with Graham, I apologize. Usually I write on the label or I leave a tag around the neck when I've got a gifted bottle, but depending on the circumstance or where I've been, if there's a lot happening, lots of people around, I can forget. Anyway, let me tell you the context of this bottle. Let me share how I came to enjoy this one. I've poured Aquaviti 6-year Arnaho side by side with their 5-year cast strength. They're both fantastic, but I prefer the 6-year. I'm so glad the Aquaviti bottlings can be shipped to the States. Yeah, I think they're doing very, very well. I mean, I think it's more than 2/3 of the States can be shipped to now, Brian. I'm very, very glad you managed to get a hold of that one. Once more, thank you very much for your generous dram, Bunny. I'm going to get something in the glass so that I can raise a wee glass to you, and thanks. The only great one I know that's guaranteed, Roy, is that guaranteed Ardbeg 30-year-old was lucky twice, Collector's Friend House. I haven't tried that one. Sounds like a cracker, Jimmy Legacy. And if it wasn't Graham Aquaviti, he certainly would have given it to you if he could have. Graham is one of the most generous guys in our community. He's amazing and super thoughtful too. Anyway, I've got some stills to show you here. This is the bottle. And the reason I haven't opened this is not only was it a gift to me, possibly from Graham, but look at the bottle number on this, 0505. For those of you that know, my birthday was just last Tuesday, 5th of May. 0505 is kind of a vanity thing on the bottling strength. Although there's actually flavour and texture reasons for 55% bottling strength as well for me. But 5 is just my number, and if there's 2 5s together, then even better. But this is getting opened tonight. I'm going to open this. This is the Fashil release, 2007 vintage. Fashil release, same as the Lagavulin actually, coincidentally. Fashil release 2018. This is Bunnahabhain's Moine Oloroso matured. 59.5% ABV. And I bought this to replace one of the most seismic bottles I'd ever tasted of Bunnahabhain. And it was a similarly spec'd 60.1% ABV release that I think came out either earlier in 2018 or in 2017. 60.1% ABV is the thing to remember there. It's a kind of goldy label. It was just one of the best whiskies I'd ever tasted from Islay, let alone from Bunnahabhain. This came very, very close to it. Anyway, I took this to Texas with me, the bottle I bought. Took it to Texas with me. We sat in a hotel in Texas, myself and Scott and Bart. I think we were doing a live stream at the time. We just casually opened this Fashil bottle and shared it, and everybody said, this is good. What happened after that is that they took it back and they did a wee review of it on their YouTube channel. And I'm just going to share some stills with you of that event, because what I maybe do is share the link with you, and I hope that you'll actually go back and watch it after the vPub. Bunnahabhain Moine Scotch Test Dummies. Chances of me finding this. Yeah, I think I found it. Video just comes up straight away. So I can hopefully link this to you. I'll stick it in the chat and hopefully you can pick it up and watch it a wee bit later. But it's one of the reason I love it so much is because of the visceral reaction that you get to this live. You literally get live contemplation. You get, lost for words, speechless reactions. You get all of this kind of crazy, visceral, sensory, organoleptic overload literally playing out on the camera. They start to lose themselves and they go quiet and they just fall into the glass and things like that. Let me share some stills with you. I'm not sharing a video clip with you, but I will share these stills. We've got the two of them sipping it here. And Bart goes on to say, as they're just kind of in silence as they chew on the glass, they go on to say, this is what makes me love Scotch so much. You can imagine me watching this live a couple of months after I'd met them in Texas, just so happy to see them enjoying the whiskey this much. I think Scott just goes and gives it a 96 out of 100 or something like that. And then Bart goes on to say, this makes me feel like I'm living in the wrong land. Scott's got his head in his hands at this point. He's just kind of lost in the glass, trying to function and realize that he's being recorded and this is going to go out on video. It's amazing to see this video. This is what these boys were doing. Just the best content that was this discovery content back in the day. And then Scott just broke his silence and said, right, this bottle's going home with me. And Bart's like, no, it's staying here. It's just fabulous. I encourage you to click that open, watch it after we've finished here tonight. And that's the bottle that I'm opening now. This is what I would class as potential epiphany bottle. Maybe it won't live up to the memory. You never know. But certainly I would suggest that it's gone down as a legendary bottle. So when I said I was going to be opening the good stuff tonight, that it was going to be special peat. Okay, I need to be careful with this cork. It's been stored well. Bunnahabhain corks are infamous for their fragility. Okay, I think we're okay. I think we're good. Yeah. Perfect. Okay, that's a wee bit like your Kilchoman. It's a blast of peat from that. That Craigduff that I've just had was very, very light on peat smoke. Look at the colour of the liquid that's just poured out of the bottle. Now we know this, we can celebrate this colour of this liquid because it says it's natural colour on the label. And it's not PX, it's not super, super, super over the top sherry. This is Oloroso, dry sherry. What are we going to get in this glass? Everything I expected, but a touch heavier on strength, alcohol strength. Right close to 60, I think, on this. Yeah, 59.5. So really stuck my nose in a bit too far there. Give it a break. Wonderful, dark, aromatic smoke, chocolate. Like, there used to be a thing in the UK called a ruffle bar, which was raspberry fondant covered in dark chocolate. So a wee bit of that, but also kind of I don't know, what kind of fruit is that? It's difficult. So let's go with just some kind of really dark red fruit, maybe a plummy edge. Yeah, let's go with ripe plums, something of that order, dark red fruit. Chocolate, more chocolate. Tobacco, a little bit like what we're getting in the Craigduff, but everything's much more vibrant. So this is a 2007 vintage, but bottled in 2018. So you're talking about, barely 10, 11 years old. But just wonderfully, so much promise on the nose. You just know there's just so much density and compact, ready to almost explode type flavor promise on the nose. There is, if I'm honest, and it's because of the whiskies I've had before, there is an unexpected edge of a kind of, you couldn't call it sulfur, but you're getting close to that kind of savory, maybe a distant struck match, or maybe the nose of the smell of the paper that you strike a match on. Something like that, but very, very soft. Anyway, cheers everyone, and here's a wee glass to my friends Scott and Bart in Kansas and Florida now, actually, these days. Cheers, boys. I hope you're going well. It's just so much. It's fire. It's everything all at once. This is probably too much to open on one vPub. Honestly, far too much. Wee bit worried about the last bottle I'm going to be opening tonight because of how potentially subtle and soft it's going to be compared to everything else we've been opening tonight. That is intense. It's dense. It's all about the Oloroso in this. This is all about the smoke and the Oloroso. I think the fact that this is Bunnahabhain Moine spirit, and this is almost a wee bit incidental, if we're being honest. With this cask activity, with this density and concentration of flavour, this could be an Ardbeg, this could be a Lagavulin, this could be, a Port Charlotte or a Kilchoman or whatever. I do think there's a little bit more refinement than maybe a Bruichladdich or a Kilchoman. There's not a lot of firm or mulch or funk. I think it's very precise in its smoke and its peat character. It's quite dry, but those fruits are ripe and juicy and suggestive, but the overall spectrum is dry. Then it just hits. It's like, okay, a wee bit of water. I've only poured a tiny wee bit of this whiskey. I might sit up till 2 a.m. after you guys have gone. I can't. I've got a busy day tomorrow. Okay, a wee bit of water in this last wee drop of it. I've clearly been enjoying this. It brings a salty aspect. Why didn't I get that before? Why didn't I get that? It's almost like a roasted nut, roasted salted peanut edge. And it's quite vivid as well. I don't know if the water's done that or if I just missed it on the first approach. Maybe the water's brought that out. It makes me fascinated. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. Wee bit of water just helps it just fire. It's like, it makes me curious. I want to go and look up. I'm not going to do it in front of you. Look up Whiskey Base and look for other reviews here, there, and everywhere to see what the rest of the world thinks of that whiskey, because for me, it is. I think it's a rare thing to have something that exceptional. When I bought this, I think it was £80, £90, something of that order. Pricey for a 10-year-old cask strength official release, though, back in 2018. But as soon as I tasted it, I knew I had to have it. I knew it was cracking. And Mikey Hastings, Roy's going to be sitting in a few corners tonight after the cameras switch off. Jesper is saying, absolutely delicious stuff. There was a group of us who went along to a tasting during Fashil, and this Moine stood out. Bought a bottle of it and shared it. One of the highlights of the fish. It was fantastic. Can you imagine, Jesper, you and I could have been at the same Fashil? It's truly something special and wonderful when a whiskey stops you in your tracks and puts a stupid big grin on your face after it almost brings you to tears, that is. Almost, it's gone beyond that for me. Sugar Kitty gonna test it. That's right, the Bart call. Absolutely. All right, time for me to go to bed, says BV Vandergulik. Thank you very much for your dram tonight. Thank you for your contribution. He's thanking us for the hospitality. It's been a blast. I'll see you soon. I hope you pick the rest up on replay, buddy. Fair night. What can I say? If that distillery think a change in the name to Bunnahabhain, I fully agree and support that. Bunnahabhain. Bunnahabhain. Oh, I see what you did there. Fantastic. If you've been anywhere on the internet, I've already seen it. Fantastic. Thank you, Jimmy. You for keeping it. You're my quality control guy, right? Gene Kelly's saying, good on you for opening a special bottle. I believe you evangelized on how important it is to do some time ago in a very poignant and touching dram face piece last year. This is turning out to be quite a night for you and us, Aquavita. A lot of impressive stuff. Have I saved the best for last, or are we going to end up on a damp squib? The Ginger Genius is saying early start tomorrow, ducking out. I'll see you next week. All being well. Great vPub. Thank you, John. Thanks for joining us. And Jeff Whiskey is saying, but does it slap, Roy? This one, Jeff, absolutely 100% slaps. Actually, a few of the bottles that I've opened tonight does the very same thing. Okay, it's very vicarious, it's very one-sided, it's very me, indulging me. A lot of you know about the story about me meeting a local friend here, the WhiskyRev, local Church of Scotland minister, literally a minister preaching in our local parish here, and me as irreligious as you can be. No care in the world for religion. I hope that's okay for all of you out there. I really hope it is okay for all of you out there. It's just the way I am, and there's no real reason for us to meet and become friends. But our wives, through the kids being at school together and things like that, were friends, and they worked out the way to get us together is because we both liked whiskey. Well, I worked out that my friend Graham, the WhiskyRev, liked that much Glenmorangie with that much lemonade. So I got him into the house, we did a flight together, a regions of Scotland type thing, and he often talks about the way I talked about Lagavulin during that evening, reminded him of his time in the police force when he was dealing with addicts. Anyway, we persisted, and we became firm friends over whiskey. Every Wednesday night was Whiskey Wednesday night, and it became, I often joke and say that it became a bit of an arms race. That I would turn up with all the latest bottles that I'd bought on a Wednesday night, and he would turn up with one. So where I was kind of scattergunning and trying to explore as much as I could, he was buying very, very specific whiskies, and it was great fun. And again, you could argue that without that process, that this channel, that learning curve, if you like, this channel might not have existed in the way that it did. And he was also one of the people that encouraged me to step forward on YouTube. Anyway, we also have another friend close by, Roberto, and his uncle Tony has old whiskies that he's been collecting over the years. And through Roberto, Uncle Tony gifted me a Port Ellen years ago. I've had this for about 10 years in the collection, I think. It's a 19-year-old old malt cask, 50% ABV Port Ellen in miniature. You can see the level starting to drop a little bit. But the idea is that maybe one day when the three of us got together, we would open these together. I think I'm right in saying that this might be the only one that's still intact. I was going to open this tonight. This was going to be my Peatfest special. I'm going to open this Port Ellen. But I'm not going to do that. I don't need to do that. Much like the generosity from Graham, much like the generosity for the Craigduff, there's more generosity has happened in our community recently. And Daniel Key, our friend Daniel, turned up at the Whiskey Club with a hug to say happy birthday to me. And my vintage, a 1970 miniature of Port Ellen. That's the one that we shall open this evening. It's quite incredible because this isn't just thoughtfulness and giving somebody a nice gift for their birthday. This is thoughtfulness at the level of Roy's a 1970 vintage. What do I have that's nice? Oh, I've got that 1970 Port Ellen. It's just, I'm not going to get emotional. I'm going to get emotional, but that Now, I don't care if this tastes like diluted, old, vegetal cardboard and mushrooms, which these old minis can, especially when the fill level is where it's at. Can you see that? Because this seal is still intact, but the fill level is very low. But what we also have is we have 40% ABV here. And I suspect that what's been evaporating from this bottle is going to be both alcohol and water. But it's just a case of these wee screw caps not being the most kind of tight, that over time, and I'm trying to think when this would be bottled. This is the Islands label, so this would have appeared on the full-size 70 CL bottle as well, this illustration. So I would place this at early 90s, something like that. So this has been bottled somewhere in the order of 20-ish years old. Unfortunately, they did it back in the day when it was the practice to just put everything out at 40%, which is heartbreaking, but it is the way that it is. Here we go to Daniel. It's now open. I fully expect this to be a potential whiskey experience kind of step down, because we're going into the unknown of a miniature, how it's been stored, all of that stuff, but we're also 40% ABV for antique whiskey, and for something that's been in glass for what, 30 plus years? Can't even get a glug out of the bottle. I'll just have a wee sip of it for tonight, if you don't mind. I won't do the whole 50 mils. Okay. Digging into a sample after saying he never gets into his samples, Kyle Taylor is saying. Yeah, it's kind of like that, isn't it? Jeff Whiskey's saying, but does it slap? I picked that one up, didn't I, bud? Keep losing the chat. Okay, here we go. Into this Port Ellen. Port Ellen was closed in 1983, as you know. As most of you know. Long lost distillery. It was widely considered, at the time it was operating, not a highly celebrated malt whiskey. I remember on Isla being told a story by one of the locals out there that one of the cheap whiskies behind the bar, and the big 1.5 litre upside down optic type bottles that they were just pouring for a dram. What the cheapest whiskey in the place was Port Ellen, and it was unloved at the time. But what happens with these closed distilleries? The stocks go off and they get forgotten about. They just get left in warehouses, or the stocks get purchased by independent bottlers like Cadenheads or Hunter Lane, or in this case, Gordon MacPhail. And they keep them, and they keep them, and they keep them. And left long enough, these awkward characters, these jaggy, all knees and elbows and toes, are allowed to turn into, oh my goodness, the nose, are allowed to turn into potential sparklers. That nose is way more than I expected it to be. No mushroom, no cardboard, no vegetal. There's a purity here, a softness. I am picking up no smoke for smoke's sake. I'm maybe picking up a backbone of soft, savory, kind of like distant campfire at best. It's so soft. Again, this is nosing waxy. Not for the first time tonight. There's a waxy character to this. With these old whiskies, you always tend to lean, you tend to look for a wee bit of kind of tropical fruit, that type of thing. I tend to look for lychees and star fruit, that kind of thing. Yellow fruit. There's maybe a wee bit here, but this is much more kind of soft, sweet orchard. Maybe a wee bit of tropical, but not much. There is smoke here. There's more smoke, given it a bit of time. Second-hand smoke, the smoke that's on clothes. damp. I think I'm going to need to just, the whiskies I'm pouring tonight, I can't leave them. I can't rush them. I'm going to be sitting here till 2 a.m. in the morning. It's, Daniel, that is absolutely gorgeous on the nose. Incredible nose for a 40% whiskey. Wow. Okay. Much fresher than you expect. There's even an effervescence and a fizz to this. Beautifully elegant, so soft, detailed. How the hell has this been? How can this exist? Ridiculously long finish. No concept or idea of what cask this is from. This is just old school, beautiful, elegant, ridiculously privileged to taste Scotch whiskey. This is the type of whiskey that makes you realize you're never going to get to a point where you've tasted it all and you've done it all and nothing's going to be a surprise to you anymore. And if that is how you're feeling, take a break. Because there's stuff like this. Did this taste like this in the early 90s? Is this how it poured from the 70 cl bottle? 75 cl bottle potentially back then? Is this how good they were drinking? Or is it already been good whiskey and then it's got even better by being left in glass for 30, 35 years? Has it had much, much more time, this chemical soup that whiskey is, to become better and better and better? I'm going to say something I did not expect to say. I was expecting to caveat this about, considering it's 40%, forget about the ABV here. This is just a gorgeous liquid. Yes, I would love to taste it at 46. Yes, I would love to taste it at cask strength. All of that nonsense. But we can't. It's 40% and it exists and it tastes like this. And I suspect this was potentially not chill filtered, not coloured, certainly. It was put out there at 40% because that's just what whiskey was. It's so, so elegant, so delicious, so soft. Ripe, old, disarming, pretty whiskey. Even after the Kilchoman, even after the Lagavulin, the Craigduff and that Bunnahabhain Moine, they're smoking this. And I'm glad to tell you that I'm confident I would pick out the smoke on this quite easily. Despite my confessions of being peat blind tonight, I think the smoke is coming across as almost like a smoke that hangs on clothes. If you've ever been next to a campfire or out at a barbecue, an open barbecue or whatever, and you come away and then later the next day or whatever, later that night, you just kind of pick up this clothes thing. I apologize. I hope you don't mind that this has been super, super indulgent. It's not a typical, I'm always opening bottles, right? It's what I love to do on the vPub. But these are special bottles. I promised you Peatfest it would be special treats tonight. And it's way beyond what I expected it to be. I hope that that's okay. I hope that it's not about me drinking all these great whiskies and you guys just whatever you can find and stuff. But there's opportunities that will come to you in your whiskey journey. You will find yourself in environments where these things are suddenly available or offered, or somebody has something, a sample to share, a bottle to open, or whatever it may be. the deeper that you end up in the rabbit hole, the more you're exposed to these little treats that come along, and you never know when they're going to happen. But they do happen. Whiskey finds you. Whiskey finds all of us. It's very, very good at it. I'm going to finish this one and thank all of you for indulging me and hopefully vicariously enjoying the drams tonight. Thank you. Oh, Daniel Key. Thank you, my friend. Let's whirl back a wee bit before we get into the quiz at the end. I think I even forgot to put up the last banner tonight for long lost Peat, but that's what we've just sipped. Yes, Port Ellen is back on stream, but it's not for us. It's not for mere mortals. You know, it's a premiumized experience. I hope that that changes in time. Greg is saying big guns are on Aquavita. Some of those Gordon MacPhail Connoisseur's Choice, even at 40%, are great. Mind you, at least in my experience, Port Ellen, Brora are big, but sure, it has to be in good shape. I think this one is, luckily for us, is in good shape, Greg is saying. Yes, they were lighter than official Diageo era special releases, for instance, and the second release is wildly heavily peated. This is as much fun as I can have watching someone else drink whiskey, says Jimmy Legg, that I don't have. Thank you, buddy. Thanks for the indulgence. I understand. Andrew Doris saying maybe you can redistill it up the ABV. I think it's perfect where it is, buddy. It's just fine. The first Port Ellen I ever tried 20 years ago in a shop, I had to ask for a seat. I fell in love immediately. You see, you're lucky. You've been sipping it for 20 years. You know, so you had it 20 years in as well, 21 years in. But 21 years ago, I didn't have any intelligence as to what Port Ellen was. Can you imagine the damage I could have done back then if I understood? Peat remains a fascination. If you still are not at the point where you love peat, always remember that word. Yet. Remember when you didn't like whiskey and now you love it? Remember when you didn't understand high strength, cask strength, sherry, bourbon, whatever it may be, and now you love it? That's what eventually happens, believe it or not, with peat. When it hits you, it hits hard. And I hope that when it does, you have an epiphany like I did. Whether it's 2009 over the Lagavulin, you know, whether it's sipping the Craigduff with friends, whether it's sipping the Moine Oloroso with a peer YouTube creator, or whether it's being gifted a really, really generous dram and treat from a pal in the community. I hope it hits you every bit as profoundly as it hit me. Jimmy's saying, Roy, your love of whiskey really confirms my idea that I may not be crazy for loving whiskey so much. No, we are crazy together, Jimmy. Let's not try to dress this up as sanity, because that is not what it is. And Adrian is saying, he's talking to Greg, and Jeff is saying, great to see you enjoying some real bangers tonight, Aquavita. Next vPub, be supermarket bottom shelf. I've done that in the past. They tend to be languishing here. The ones that I've been pouring tonight are going to be harder to reach past. Menno is saying, having family over tomorrow, so I'll parachute here. We'll catch the quiz tomorrow. Thank you for a wonderful evening with you and the Barflies. I really needed this vPub fix. Menno, I hope the reason you needed the vPub fix was healthy and positive. Enjoy the time with the family, my friend, and thanks for hanging out with us tonight. Thank you, buddy. Donald Pass Whiskey Tim is saying, pulled out a bunch of 4-ounce samples of whiskies that are all over 20 years old that I've been saving for 6 years or more. Just beautiful things. Tim, if I've encouraged you, bullied you, kind of coaxed you into opening some special drams, I hope it ends up being appropriate, and I hope you end up enjoying it. I've enjoyed it. Now we watch the traffic plummet. We watch people leave because we're going to quiz at the end. But before you leave, if you've enjoyed tonight, remember to leave a wee like. And maybe if you're sitting comfortably and you've got a wee bit of whiskey left in the glass, stay for the quiz at the end. I cannot promise you that it's going to be easy. I know that it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be quite difficult. And to get 10 out of 10 or to get pass mark of 5 out of 10 is not going to be guaranteed. But it's fun, and we do it together. You only play against yourself. It's always multiple choice. And you can, if you want to, lean on the beautiful whiskey folk. In fact, we encourage it. I'll remind everyone that there isn't a vPub next week because I'm at Campbelltown Malts Festival. The good news is, well, not good news, but the news is the week after, on the 28th, I'm not at Fishiel this year. I won't be on Isla. I'll be back here in the seat, perched up behind the bar to welcome you all. In the meantime, it looks like Jim over at the Whiskey Novice channel is going to host you on Thursday night next week. The topic that he's going to share, the details and things like that, we're not sure yet. I only spoke to Jim earlier today to let him know. So it's quite short notice, but I'll put it out through the Aquaviti Guardians page. I'll put it on the Patreons page. I'll put it in the Circle social media app, the Aquaviti Guardians Circle social media app, so that everybody knows that there's a place to go next Thursday night. However, if I'm going to see you down in Campbelltown, even better. I look forward to seeing you there. Brian has bought me another dram tonight to say I'm not going to try to lose my ass hat on tonight's quiz like I did last week. Well, listen, you never know how it's going to work out. Sometimes you know them, Brian. Sometimes you might need to lean on the crowd. Anthony Lambert is saying, Aquaviti, have loved this one. My newest Scottish mate, this taff, thanks you. This jock, thanks you, buddy. Cheers, Anthony. It was nice, so nice to spend time with you in Limburg this year. Not enough time, if I'm honest. Yuri, simply about whiskey. Yuri, good to see you. Yes, quiz. Whiskey left in the glass is long row 18. Perfect. Good to have you, Yuri, and Sticks 1914. On that note, Aquaviti, it's been a fantastic event. Only caught the last hour or so we'll watch again. Thanks, Sticks. Sorry I wasn't able to encourage you to stay until the quiz at the end. Let's bring up our quiz at the end. Did I put the right date in tonight? 14th of May. Yes, I did. So next week, just to remind everyone, 21st, I'll be at the Campbelltown Malts Festival. But the week after, in 2 weeks' time, I'll be right back here with all of you at the end of May. On the 31st of May, it's going to be a Sunday. So for my Guardians, for my patrons, for my higher tier barflies, for everyone that supports me, I'll relax on a Sunday night with you all to update everyone on what's happening for the year ahead. On a lock-in on the 31st of May. I look forward to welcoming you there. In the meantime, charge your glasses, steel yourselves for what I predict is going to be a tricky quiz at the end. Look, good luck, everyone. Here we have who's become our main kind of quiz leader, I would say, recently. Whiskey with Molly, Ben, quiz time, he's saying. Also closely followed by Sugar Kitty Jeff, who's always here, always scoring super well on the quiz. But try genuinely and play along as yourself and keep your own score. If you want to change your mind, you can, of course. But keep a score or a note of what you'd be doing if you played purely on your own knowledge. If you want to have real fun, you can do a Michael Wood. And you can just list random ABCs 10 times. Just an A, a C, a B, a C, an A. 10 of those. Because that's the multiple choice chimpanzee. They should be, even a chimpanzee should be able to score 3 or 4 out of 10 on the quiz at the end. See how the random numbers would score. Good luck, everyone, as we roll into question 1. This year's Loch Gorm is a 10-year-old. But which of these age statements have appeared on previous Loch Gorm releases? Now, this is a hard question, but it's multiple choice. And I also told everyone when I was sipping the Loch Gorm tonight, A, 5-year-old has appeared previously, B, a 9-year-old has appeared previously, or C, a 10-year-old has appeared previously. Jimmy Legg is saying, I've never changed my mind before, and I'm not about to start now. I happen to know that that's a fib, Jimmy Legg. But I'm happy to have you here, whether or not you want to be changing your mind or not. And in we jump, in we go. Fantastic to see everyone in. Kyle Taylor's still here. Andrew's here. Billy Bennett. Making Ram Decisions playing along. Ryan Ginger, looks like. Is that the first time, or is that a different name? Maybe. Ryan, it's nice to have you here. Fairnight Walker, Big Jimmy Jazz, Stuart Dalgleish, that looks like a new name. Stuart, great to have you playing along. Glenn FC is here. Good to see you again, Glenn. I hope you're keeping well, my friend. Adrian Hanna's playing along as the chat jumps. That means I'm struggling a little bit. Magdalena is playing along. Good to have you, Magdalena. Looks like a new name. A Martin 6602 could be a new name. I feel like it is. Yuri Simply About Whiskey, good to see you playing, Yuri. Ian Bruce, Where's Roy? Too Slow, Bruce Bernard, Nicholas J, Anthony Lambert, fantastic. Even Where's Roy from Norway's in tonight, fantastic. Trevor Hedges here, good to see you back again, Trevor. Rob Too Slow is playing along. The Bangs, these YouTube names, these random handles that have been given out, I know that they're tricky, but that looks like another new name, along with James Morgan, fantastic. Everyone's going for C on this one, and Greg's Whisky Guide, some of you are saying B. Then I can tell you that I did mention the non-age statement stuff for ages and ages, and then recently they put 8, 9 and 10-year-old whiskies out there. So if you answered B or C on this one, you're absolutely right. Well done. An easy one to start with is rolling to question 2. Which of these marketing straplines might be associated specifically with an Ardnamurchan single malt whiskey? I'm going to give you 3 marketing straplines. I need you to pick out the one that Ardnamurchan Distillery uses. A, time well spent. B, taste the story. C, headland of the great seas. Anthony Lambert is confident. Keep him coming. He's saying with him, he's 1 out of 1. The majority of you got this one absolutely right. Jesper is saying Blee. Nice. Papa Q is here. Good to see you, Papa Q. How are you keeping? Mikey Hayes playing along at the end. Fantastic. David Owen is in. Good to see you, David. Usually picking up on replay. Good to have you there for the quiz. He's saying he thinks it's B. He's agreeing with Where's Roy in Norway. Bowman 1999. Good to see you, Rob. Hope you're keeping well. Sugar Kitty is going with B on this one. And Franz G is in playing along as well, also saying B. And Whiskey with Molly Ben is saying, is C what Ardnamurchan means in Gaelic? We've already answered B. And Whiskey Slayer is saying 2 out of 2. Now it gets tricky. Not tricky yet. I can tell you, Lachlan Mackenzie, you're going to be kicking yourself because time well spent is actually associated with Ardnamurchan, but it's the strapline for Marlowe watches they did a collaboration with. Taste the Story is used by Ardnamurchan. Headland of the Great Seas is one of the complex Gaelic translations for Ardnamurchan. They talk about, if you do an internet search, it's seals and otters and all sorts of nonsense, but Headland of the Great Seas is used by Ardnamurchan, but not as an official strapline. If you answered C and you want to take that, you can have it, but the official Ardnamurchan strapline, less used recently, but it's still on their website today, is Taste the Story. Question 3. Which of these brands' core lineup features sherry, port, bourbon, and sweet white wine maturation, all with age statements? What brand am I talking about? Sherry, port, bourbon, and sweet white wine. All age stated. Am I talking about Glenmorangie? Am I talking about Glenmurray? Or am I talking about Glencadam? Fraser Ewing is saying 2 questions late, too busy chatting to my boy. I'll strap in and join the fun. Fraser, strapping to your boy is far more important than 2 questions at the quiz at the end, buddy. Stuart Dalgleish is guessing on this one, but he's guessing with A. Make a Dram Decision is going with A as well. Mikey Hayes going with A. I'm always nervous that there's people constantly answering and I miss them and they feel unseen or ignored. And if that ever happens, just know that I don't see you, Brian Stormont. I see you. You're speaking to me and need to pour more attention to labels, etc. Nae clue. Maybe it's just that I pay an unhealthy amount of attention to labels. Like say, but not more important than 3 questions. Well, I know it's a joke, Jimmy, but chatting to your son is not a bad distraction of time. The reason I started drinking single malt, Anthony Lambert is saying, and he's going with A. The nectar is no longer of gold, says Craig's Whiskey Guide. Well done, everyone. You know that I'm talking about La Santa. I'm talking about Quinta Ruban. I'm talking about a standard 10 or 12-year-old. And I'm talking about nectar.org, Glenmorangie. Absolutely. Well done. Well spotted. Everybody, you notice they've all had a bump in age statement. The Quinta Ruban is 14. The La Santa is 15 now. The sweet white wine, the Nectar d'Or, is 16-year-old. The standard 10 has gone to a 12. Interesting changes in whiskey, right? Question 4. Back in the 1990s, the label Deerstalker single malt was sourced specifically from which seldom seen Scotch malt distillery? Way back in the beginning, Deerstalker single malt was sourced from A. Glenburgie, B. Royal Lochnagar, or C. Balmainic. I just realised I put this in as question 4, and I was going to modify the question to make it slightly easier. So can I do that live now? Yes, I can do that live now. In the 1990s, the label Deerstalker single malt was sourced from which seldom seen Speyside Scotch malt distillery? I hope that helps you a little bit. Just double checking my intel there. Greg is saying, I have 2 bottles of this range, but not sure which was the first. But as the last one is rather old, I'll pick C. And I have it indeed. Ian Bruce is following the C of C's. Fairnight Walker is saying, follow you guys here, C. I think this is a distillery that essentially built the brand, but these days Deerstalker can be any single malt, and they tend to specify it a wee bit more. It's not distributed much in the UK. I think it's mostly a European brand. I'm not really sure where it goes. James Morgan is saying cheers for the pass mark, even after 4. Deerstalker is indeed. Royal Lochnagar is an Eastern Highlands distillery, so if we keep it to Speyside, it's either Glenburgie or the answer is Balmainic. From Inverhouse, Wormtub Distillery, hardly, I mean, it does appear from time to time, but there's not a hell of a lot of it around. But once upon a time, Balmainic was available under the Deerstalker brand. Greg is saying beautiful stuff, even at 40%, and surprisingly a bit smoky. Oh, wow. Need to look out for that in my peat blindness, Greg. Question 5 is always a picture question, an image. We're looking at an aerial shot of what looks to be a distillery scene. Where are we looking? A, we're looking into the Northern Highlands. B, we're actually in the Western Highlands. Or C, we're in the fertile Eastern Highlands. Where are we looking at? 4 out of 4 for Anthony, rolling along nicely. Andrew Doris, I've got a 3.5 out of 4. I would say it's the quiz at the end, Andrew. Just give yourself a 4 out of 4. That's good enough for me. If it works for you. Brian is on a 4 out of 4. Really difficult on my phone screen, says Ian. Going to have to lean on the crowd. Well, at least you can zoom in on the full screen. On the phone screen, you can actually pinch and zoom, right? No, I'm not suggesting that you can pinch and zoom in on the road sign to work out what distillery it is, but get pretty close. I've just had the last sip of that Bunnahabhain. Superb. I've really, 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 in case it wasn't obvious, enjoyed these whiskies tonight. And Ian's saying, oh yeah, I can. Andrew's saying if Roy says it's 4, I'll take it. I think you should. Greg is saying, go with the crowd then, as I'm not sure. Not sure. Let me just go back to clear up the image a wee bit there to take the potential answers away. We're going A is northern, B is western, C is eastern Highlands. See if you can see the scene there. We are actually looking at 2 distilleries. Actually 2 distilleries on this site. One of them is Clynelish. The other one is Brora. And if you knew that, we would then be in the Northern Highlands. So if you answered A, well done. Clynelish and Brora. Question 6. Over to Isla now. When Ian MacArthur retired from Lagavulin in 2023, Diageo released a special 18-year-old commemorative bottling to celebrate his 50 years in whiskey. How many bottles were released? How many bottles of this special 18-year-old Lagavulin malt did Diageo release to celebrate Ian MacArthur's 50 years in whiskey? Was it A, 18,000 bottles, B, 1,800 bottles, or C, 18 bottles? James DeGiulio is in. Good to see you, James. Billy Bennett still playing along. Fantastic. Warner, One Glassman's playing along as well. A. Martins is playing along. Good to see you. Magdalena is still playing along. Going for B on this one. Kyle Taylor. Lachlan McKenzie. Blee. Brian still playing along. Celebrating his pass mark with a 5 out of 5. Anthony Lambert saying sounds about right for B. Whiskey with Molly saying C. Gray's Whiskey Guide is saying sounds more reasonable. B sounds more reasonable. Voting B. Yuri Simply About Whiskey. I had a wonderful warehouse tasting led by Ian. He's one of the best, Yuri. You were very lucky. I was fortunate to have about half a dozen Ian MacArthur warehouse tastings over the years. Loved every moment of every one of them. I loved his character. I loved his attitude to whiskey and to people and stuff. Superb. We're talking about Diageo here, and we're talking about the stupidity of their decisions and the weirdness and the oddness. And just think about the amount of people that Ian MacArthur touched over the years and how many people would want to share in a commemorative bottling to celebrate Ian MacArthur's 50 years in whiskey. But no, what did Diageo do? They released 18 bottles. 18. Unobtainium. Nobody's going to touch it. Nobody's going to see a bottle. It's just so odd. 18,000 bottles with his face on should have been all over the planet. They would have still been worth gold. But so many more Ian MacArthur fans would have had something in their hands. Anyway, question 7. How are Dallas Dew Distillery and Dallas, Texas connected? What connects Dallas Dew Distillery and Dallas, Texas? A, they're both named after Dallas, Scotland. B, they're both named after Daedalus in Spain. I suppose that would then be pronounced Daedalus. I don't know. Or C, they're both named after someone who was called Dallas. What connects Dallas Dew Distillery and Dallas, Texas? Both named after a place in Scotland called Dallas, both named after a place in Spain called Daedalus, or both named after someone who was called Dallas. Illuminate 876, you just had to step in with that one, right? Not mentioned a comment. Not seen your name all night. That's okay. That's okay. Absolutely no clue, I have to admit, says Greg. And Trevor Hedge is saying J.R. Ewing. We have a Fraser Ewing. This is such a banana skin. Such a banana skin. Jimmy's saying, I can start calling you Dallas if you like, Roy. You're fine, big guy. You're absolutely fine. Whiskey Slayer is suggesting it's a village in Morayshire. Okay, this is tricky. This is a real banana skin here. A real banana skin, although some of you have managed to get there. Takes a wee bit of history. Dallas Stew is named after the general parish. There's a village in Morayshire called Dallas as well. But Dallas, the village, and Dallas Stew, the distillery, both took their names from someone who the parish was gifted to way back hundreds of years ago. A descendant of which was George Dallas, Vice President of the USA in 1845, and the guy who gave his name to Dallas, Texas. It's coincidental, incidental, interesting that they were both related. George Dallas was a direct descendant of the original Dallas that gave their name to the village and the distillery, but that's the link. There is a link there, but it's quite tenuous. But both Dallas and Dallas Stew and Dallas the village are named after someone. Dallas Stew is back in operation again. Whiskey with Molly is calling VAR on this one. Very topical, Ben. Well done. Question 8. It's reported that Lagavulin... Were you going to call VAR on any that you get wrong, Ben? It's reported that Lagavulin will release a 31-year-old bottle for Fashil in 2026. This year. That's alongside a more affordable, more available 14-year-old. What was the previous oldest Fashil release from Diageo? So the 31-year-old will be their oldest release yet. What was the previous oldest? Was it A, a 19-year-old, B, a 21-year-old, or C, a 29-year-old? A nice drams come in from Barry Hislop. No comment or anything, Barry. It's just nice of you to say hello. Nice of you to buy me a wee dram fella. Nice of you to join us for the quiz at the end. Cheers to you. It's reported that Lagavulin will release their oldest ever Fashil bottling this year, a 31-year-old guys. But they'll also release it alongside a supposedly more affordable 14-year-old, but we don't know how much that is. What was the previous oldest Fashil release from them? 19 years old, 21 years old, or 29 years old? Missing Graham Fraser, says Jimmy Legg. He's struggling a little bit in your own fella. Lachlan McKenzie's gambling on B. Stuart Douglas is saying should be 40. Oh, are we saying that Lagavulin released a 40-year-old Fashil? If that's the case, Stuart, it's one that passed under my radar. Skies, I think that's 2023 or 2024. Skies is also this year, Ben, if it's been previously called that. But I can tell you that the answer I'm looking for, you guys have mostly got. Yes. A couple of years ago, alongside a 10-year-old, they released a 29-year-old Fashil bottling in 2024. Well done if you answered C. But the oldest one is going to be released this year. I don't know why I'm even thinking about it or asking questions about it, because the thing is long, long out of reach. Okay, I'll work out who's still holding it together. I can see Sugar Kitty's on full marks already. Kyle Taylor's holding it together. There might be a few more. As we roll into the penultimate question, which of these things happened in 1969? Janie Mitchell purchased A, Hazelburn and Longrow brands. B, Janie Mitchell purchased Cadenhead's independent bottlers. Or the closer you get to Campbelltown, Cadenhead's independent bottlers. Or is it C, Janie Mitchell purchased the site of the original Glengyle distillery? Jimmy Legacy, I should have been a dentist. I could afford some of this stuff. Yeah. Do you really want to afford it? I mean, if you had the money to just burn on the whims of corporate contrived nonsense and greed, no, I don't think I would. I hope I wouldn't. Off work tomorrow for a weekend away with a good wife who's a massive peathead. Messed up the first super chat. All the best, Roy and Barflies. Barry, you messed up nothing, my friend. But it's nice that I was able to pick up that comment so I could raise a glass, say thank you, and wish you and the wife a fantastic wee trip away. I hope there's some peaty whiskies involved for you both. Cheers, Barry. Oh, I'd burn it aquavitae and share it. I hope you don't mean like KLF, burn it on a hillside. I hope you mean spend it liberally and share it. Okay, most of you going for B on this one for the looks of it. I would say that you're all very wise, very informed. Hazelburn and Longrow brands were eventually acquired by J.A. Mitchell, but not until the 1990s. Maybe late 80s, actually. Site of the original Glengyle distillery was in 2000, but Cadenhead's Independent Bottlers was purchased in 1969. So the answer was clearly B. As we roll into the ass hat at the end, any of you on a 9 out of 9? Any of you holding it together for a 10 out of 10 tonight? Be amazing to see. Kel Taylor is saying 9 out of 9. Fantastic. Meow Sugar Kitty as well. Looks like Jeff might be there too. Yes, Sugar Kitty still on a 9 out of 9. Ben has slipped up. He is calling VAR on one of these. Sorry, Ben. Sorry, big guy. But it's good that even people like Ben can still slip up on the vPub quiz at the end, even if he is shouting for VAR. But I can see only Sugar Kitty and Kyle Taylor on a 9 out of 9 tonight. Might be a bit of a tricky quiz. Let's see if we can get them over the final rug pulling that is often the ass hat question at the end. How many operational Scotch malt burn distilleries there are today? So how many distilleries that are operational and active today have the word burn in the name? Seems straightforward, right? What does it match up to? Is it around the same as the number of A, Strath distilleries in Speyside, B, Loch distilleries in Scotland, or C, more distilleries in Scotland? How many operational Scotch malt distilleries with burn in the name are there active today? Around the same number as Strath distilleries in Speyside, Loch distilleries all over Scotland, or more distilleries all over Scotland? Mikey is saying, love this question. I think you'll be in the minority, buddy. Whiskey with Molly screaming, never a handball. Still on his VAR topic. Again, very topical. Okay, this is definitely splitting the crowd. Stuart O'Gleish is going to be on this, while Jimmy Legg is going for C. And Whiskey Slayer is going for A. We've also got a split over George O'Brien going for C, but Brian and Dave Barnes going for B. Dave, so good to see you. I hope you're keeping well, my friend. Bruce Bernard is pulling attention to this as Nicholas goes for A. Yuri Simply About Whiskey is simply answering, oh no. Big Jimmy Jazz, good to see you still playing along, Jimmy, with an A. Lachlan McKenzie's guessing C on this one. It is a C. So you're sitting there going, racking your head for how many burn distilleries do I know? Remember, Hazelburn is no longer a distillery. It's not been for 100 years. It's a brand these days, so discount that, but there are other burn distilleries. And does that number that you come up with match the amount of Strath numbers you can come up with in Speyside, or Loch distilleries all over Scotland, or more distilleries all over Scotland? Let's put you out your misery. But first I'll help you by giving you the answers. Strath distilleries in Speyside, numbers 2, Strathmill and Strathisla. Loch distilleries across Scotland, number 5. And more distilleries across Scotland, number 7. So how many burn distilleries are there? You've got a second bite at this. 2, 5, or 7. Kyle Taylor is saying, oh, I was off. Few seconds to change your mind, should you wish to. Ian Bruce is switching to A. He's agreeing with Ben Whiskey with Molly because he was torn between A and B, but he settled on A. Was thinking B for Burns. And George O'Brien is in. Good to see you, George. And he's going for A. Whiskey Slayer is sticking on his original answer. And I'm not sure what that was, buddy. I would need to scroll up, wouldn't I, to see what it was. I trust you. Okay, Rob Too Slow is going for B and Loch Distilleries. I can tell you that Speyburn and Wolfburn are the only two burn distilleries. It matches the amount of Strath distilleries in Speyside, Strathisland, Strathmill, and that is your asshat for this evening. Did anybody manage a 10 out of 10 tonight? Sugar Kitty saying, oh, you messed this up before. There are 3 burns. Speyburn, Wolfburn, and Burn O'Benny. Oh, Sugar Kitty, you've suddenly become the hero of the quiz at the end for that one. So, for anybody who got the asshat at the end wrong, I've been caught out by Sugar Kitty for someone who recycles questions from time to time, tries to change them and switch them and make them a wee bit different, but he's absolutely spot on. Burn O'Benny was missed previously, and it's been missed again tonight. So that means the answer is 3. Now, it's not 5 or 7, so when I say around the same number as, the answer is still A. But I've been called out for making a mistake and getting a question wrong. And the rules for the vPub quiz at the end, when I make a mistake, when I get something wrong, everyone can claim that as a point. Sugar Kitty is claiming he's 10 out of 10, and he deserves it. Well done, Jeff. Well done, fella. How are we getting on with Kyle Taylor? Oh, slipped up at the end, but Kyle, you can take it. Thanks to your buddy Sugar Kitty. You can claim it, and it's yours if you want to. Sugar Kitty, Jeff, well done. Kyle Taylor, well done. Everybody else, for lasting almost 3 hours with me as I drank marvellous whiskies with you all tonight. Well done. Thank you. Terrific, terrific, terrific stuff. I'm going to kill the stream before it hits 3 hours tonight. I think I've kept you all up long enough. But I'm going to spend a wee bit of time with these gems. I don't want to rush any more of them. I'm going to just relax with them, switch everything off, and look forward to Campbelltown Malts Festival next week. And of course, look forward to being back with you 2 weeks from now on the 28th. A few days after that, on the 31st, Sunday the 31st, I'll host a wee casual, informal lock-in with all my guardians who can support me at aquaviti.com, all my patrons, and all my higher tier barflies. Whether you're here just to watch and play along, whether you're here just to participate and click like, drop an occasional comment, whether you're here as a supporter, as a barfly, as a guardian, as a patron, whatever shape you're here in, I appreciate you. I really, really do. Even when it's really self-indulgent nights like tonight, regardless, I hope you've still been able to find something that's worthy, that's enjoyable, that's interesting, and that might make you want to come back and hang out with me again on the 28th. Until then, I'll raise a wee glass to thank you all for everything. Remind you that you're very dearly loved and wish you the very best of health. Slanchiva. Cheers.